Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the July 19th meeting of the Hyde Park Planning Board. Please take note of all the exits around the room in case of emergency, and now join me as we reaffirm our loyalty to the great American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. A quick housekeeping note. Board Member Kane is on vacation and not with us tonight. The first item on the agenda is continued public hearing for the Enclave at Hyde Park. As a reminder, the applicants are seeking to change a previously existing subdivision of 74 units into a smaller, more tight and compact subdivision that will contain 50 two-family homes. They get a motion to reopen the public hearing.
So move. Second.
Aha, the tag team's back. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Alexander, Ms. Patty, welcome back.
Thank you very much.
For those in the audience who won't, this will be the first time for this application. This has been subject to numerous discussions, meetings. We believe we're nearing the end of it. In this instance, this requires not just a re-subdivision, so new lot lines drawn, but under our code, two-family housing requires also special use permits as well as site plan approval. So we've been working with the applicants pretty much throughout the year. This won't be relevant to those in the audience, but for those on the board, Mr. Alexander just dropped off a nice thick sheet of documents for Victoria to review. Ms. Polidoro has her work cut out.
She's excited.
And just to explain this to the audience, because there was a subdivision previously created, it's over 50 units. 50-unit subdivisions in Greater require central water and central sewer. Once the subdivision is made, there are actually waterworks corporations and sewer transportation corporations formed that actually own the land. So to re-subdivide it and redraw the lines is legally complicated, even though we all believe this is a much better project in honesty in terms of where the market is right now than what the initial project was. So on that note, let me turn it over to you guys.
Sure, thank you. We appreciate that beginning, and Victoria, I know we need to set up an FTP site and coordinate with your office so you can download the documents. And
that's a good start.
we think we got it right. I think, candidly, there have been some minor changes in the drawings since we drew up all those documents. We our office finished drawing up those documents on June 30th. The the final subdivision submission set is from July 5th or 6th. So there's some refinements that have occurred. So I think there probably are some things that you and I should talk about, not only intellectually, but when we get in the weeds, as to did we approach it right, and also did we make some changes since then, because there was discussions about how the condominium was going to be formed with the tax assessor. So Nicole and I were just talking about this right before the meeting. Lots 4 and 13's configurations have definitely changed, and we are still not 100% sure and need to get with the condo attorney as to the exact, whether lot 4 is where the access easement goes right through. So we're trying to confirm, and I drew it up assuming that the parking spaces that we'd relocated to that area would be in the access easement. They may actually need to, for the reasons associated with the condo plan and the condo attorney, actually wind up being on lot 4. So then the grantor of the easement will change. So that's Exhibit D. We did a emergency access easement, and we may need a second document or we may need to make lot 4 clearly taken subject to that parking area occurring. So we got to figure out a couple of little things like that as we go forward. Definitely in the weeds on that. And then we also, compared to the preliminary subdivision, and I can grab, I guess, I'm not going to get yelled at, right?
No, Mr. Sweet is no longer the director.
He calls in, though, every once in a while when you're watching.
Thank you, Pete. That could have been, yeah.
He's watching you at home.
I feel that. I feel that. So just this plan is not 100% accurate from what we submitted, particularly with regard to this parking area we were discussing right here.
We've also are now looking at moving, right now the water parcel is essentially this area up to here. We're looking at moving it actually to wrap it around these lots up to here, just to make it bigger, because it's losing compared to the meadows. If you can sort of recall the meadows where a lot of this land in here was waterworks land, so that way when the justification is that the overall area that the waterworks owns isn't really decreasing as far as land mass that much. So it rationalizes it out. And so lots of little things like that we're still refining, but the documents have been drawn up, as per the plan that was approved at preliminary. But because of some of the changes, we leave it to the board as to whether you want to have a public hearing on final. I mean, you're going to have a public hearing on the special permits for the two-family anyway. So, under a belt and suspenders approach, we would be, comfortable with the notice for that. So that way, no one later says, "Well, preliminary and final did have differences. Were they appreciable?" We might as well we're having the public hearing anyway.
Since we're in public hearing mode, aren't we in public hearing still on the site plan and special use permit?
Yes. But
Okay.
So set up a separate but co-equal public hearing, so we would just have it on all three again.
Correct.
At the end of this discussion, we can resolve that, but I think that seems like a good idea to me. Anything else you want to add, Ms. Patty?
No, I think Neil kind of addressed any of the outstanding issues that we have. A lot of the items that were conditions of preliminary approval we have worked to address in our revised plan set that we submitted. Obviously, there are a couple of outstanding items that do need to be addressed, and the majority of those are the legal documentation that has to be reviewed between the attorneys.
So before I go on to the consultants, then, we had an issue at our agenda meeting about the sidewalks. So sidewalks are proposed at 4 feet. Full ADA compliance is 5 feet. You're supposed to have 5 feet except where physical limitations of the land prevent that. That noted, 4 feet can be acceptable under ADA. However, you have to have every 200 feet a 5 by 5 foot landing. Mm-hmm. The landing, it says straight out, can be carports or driveways, but someone has to certify that they're at least are no more than 200 feet apart, and they have to have no more slope than 2%, as I recall, all that. So it appears as though if we want to keep this at 4 feet, we could allow the driveways to be the landings, assuming that there's no space where it would be further than 200 feet unless you can make one.
Okay.
I'm just bringing that up because that's for the board to determine. This is one of those small but pesky issues that we need to resolve so we can get this done, finalized. Mr. Sotero, do you have any comments?
Yeah. Liz and I have had an opportunity. We've gone through the latest set of plans. So we have a draft memo. And, again, if we were starting this project from on a blank canvas, it'd be a much easier project. But, being that, we're mixing and matching some things here with the old project, there is a lot of complexity. So I talked to Ken Casamento today. I sent an email around, to Michael and Victoria. And what I would like to do is have a meeting, a technical meeting, similar to what we did for the Mavis when we had the applicants come into our office and, go over a lot of the small things that we found. I'm going to go talk about a couple of, the highlights, things I'd like for the board, to think about. But there just seems to be like a lot of things. And again, they're minor, but like instead of me writing a 30-item like memo,
Let's go over them in person.
I think if we just sit down and go through, and then I write like a summary memo after we have the meeting, similar to what we did for the Mavis. I think that'll be the better way to handle it. And Ken and I talked about that today. So let's go over a couple things. So the chairman started talking about the sidewalks. So we're looking at the plans, and we've talked a lot here about sidewalks. And, you know, I looked through the DOT document on sidewalks, and when we're in a residential subdivision, and if they are going to have sidewalks, you typically have sidewalks on both sides of the road. And you know, the premise is to limit, you know, the crossings, people crossing from one side to the other. Now, you know, when Ken and I had talked, you know, today, I understand the applicant's point, not only from, you know, cost, but you know, it's a low volume, you know, road. There's not going to be a lot of, you know, the speed of the vehicles shouldn't be that like much. So I can understand, you know, the pushback. But what I said was, well, we have, you know, the caveat of we have the clubhouse, and the clubhouse has a pool and you know, some other things there. So, you know, I think with that, you may see more people, you know, walking here, maybe going to the clubhouse instead of jumping in, you know, their car, you know, like and driving over. So, so I think we should just discuss the possibility of sidewalks on both sides of the road, basically where you have the houses on both sides of the road. I think right now the sidewalk is on the, I get my bearings right, I believe it's on the north side of the road.
It would be on the south side, opposite the first 5 houses. You would cross the
Yes.
road and then go, you would access the bocce court.
Right, right.
Should be doing this, I'm sorry. So it's right along there.
Yes, that's correct, yeah. So again, I think that's something that, you know, as the planning board members have some comments, that's something that we can talk about. Couple other things I had, as far as the buildings go, at some point we're going to have to get the elevations for the new units. They're going to have to specify, I believe there's a varying choice of colors. So we should get those colors with, you know, the manufacturers on them. We should get, you know, the shingles are going to be this, you know, the manufacturer, you know, the siding is going to be this. And then Ken and I talked a little bit about what's going to happen to the clubhouse, because that's going to be one of the houses that are out there now is going to be reused. So what's going to happen to that? Is it going to be fixed up, any exterior like improvements to it? And I believe that you guys had a meeting with Don Westermeyer because there was a concern about whether the building would meet the code for a clubhouse. And I believe that it's okay. Is that right?
I believe so. The architect, Maury Associates, is working directly with Don
Right.
to make sure that
Right.
Everything is.
But I think that there was a question of, hey, if there's a problem with the building, then we're just going to go knock it down and we'll build new or something like that.
I think financially it made more sense than to try and rebuild everything
Yeah.
from the inside out.
Okay, but so, you know, assuming that it's going to be there, then we should just get some information on what, if anything, is going to be done to the exterior of it.
Yeah, our forthcoming submission will have
Okay.
the elevations, the colors, the materials board, the layout for the membership club, all of the architecturals.
Mr. Tompkins from Moore Associates came back
Yeah,
in
right.
April, I think it was, to show us, and
Yes.
he gave us
He did show.
a brief sort of review of colors.
Yes.
But we just, Mrs. Moss would like to have the paint things submitted, not the shingles, et cetera, just a storyboard for us to review again, so she can take a picture of it, I think.
Yeah, we should have that in the file, just for when they build. The other thing is, I talked to Ken about the subdivision plat. You know, the houses are going to be on actual lots. Then we've got several parcels that are HOA parcels. We have a water parcel. We have a sewer parcel. We have you know, a solar, you know, like parcel. We have a membership club parcels. So we just need to get his surveyor together, and I haven't had a chance to ask, you know, our surveyor, but I don't know if some of these other parcels, like, you know, the sewer plant should have an actual lot number. They're all going to have tax grid numbers because they're all the parcels are going to be taxed. But I just don't know if they should have a lot number or they should just say parcel A, parcel B, parcel C. So we'll, you know, work that out. The other thing was, and again, this is something that the planning board might want to talk about. We have had discussions on the phasing of the sidewalk and when it would go in, and there was a bunch of notes that were placed on the map, and it's a little hard to follow, you know, the notes as to when the sidewalks are going to, you know, be going in. So I'd like to sit down again, maybe we can, as, you know, the board members have comments, maybe that's something that we can talk about, but it wasn't clear to me from the notes on the map as far as when the sidewalks would, you know, be going in different areas. And along those lines, we also have to talk about the landscaping, you know, phasing, or if there is going to be phasing, I assume, for, you know, the trees on the street. So that's something. And I think, I'm just looking at my notes here. The other thing I talked to Ken about, and I think that's already been discussed between Neil and Victoria, but I had a concern or a question about, you know, the parcel that's going to be left to the north, which is going to be the solar parcel supposedly. But I just had a concern about whether, if it didn't become a solar farm parcel, does that have the ability to be subdivided with more density? But from what I understood, like today, you guys have already had some conversations on that. That came up at the ZBA. And from what I understand, even if there was going to be residential units there, it'd be pretty minimal. I don't want to speak for anybody, but...
Do you want to go ahead, Victoria?
You know, I don't recall the entire, you're probably fresher than I am, but the zoning board intentionally left some density on the lot so that it wouldn't just go off the tax rolls and be unbuildable.
Okay.
But it did come up, Pete, just to answer, it came up, we talked about it, it was actually in, oh, wow, yours is annotated, you beat me there. There was a whereas clause that said, whereas the 25-acre lot would retain the potential for dwelling units if not used for commercial use, currently 10 units under the zoning law. So the theory was that even though the variances were granted to create this project, again, relating to the fact that you're essentially winding up with 50 dwelling units where 74 were, if for some reason the solar project didn't work out for some reason, and you wound up with that lot coming in for you know, its own project at 2.5 acres per dwelling unit, maximum's 10 plus 50, 60, that's still significantly less than the 74 that could have been built under the filed map that exists. And they were essentially comfortable with that math, and that they were getting a 20%, worst case scenario, you were getting a 20% reduction instead of essentially a 1/3 reduction.
I
Plus
thought
you need to subtract
the
road,
open, and the open
Right.
space requirement, so you wouldn't even get up to 10.
All agreed, and not the goal here. The goal
No,
here
okay.
is to do a community solar project, you know, 2 megawatts or...
And for the audience, this proposal was actually approved under our prior zoning code, so the density that they were guaranteed originally, the 74 lots, was allowed under that code. The current code calls for much less density in the outlying greenbelt areas, they're called, in the greenbelt district, which is why when the applicants first came to us proposing a significantly smaller parcel or layout, if you're looking, you can see these roads were already roughed out, water is already brought to them, each lot, as was sewer, because there's a central sewer system here. So instead of it sprawling out with houses all along here, it's not going to be a compact, dense development. These are basically townhouses. They're quite nice. As I understand it, the project sponsor, Mr. Mermelstein, would like to be selling this next spring, so which would be exciting. We haven't had a new development of houses in Hyde Park on the market in a while. New, that is. We still have continuing ones. So thank you, Pete. I do want to just, before I go on to Victoria, point out I thought that we had tentatively agreed that what would happen is as soon as, say, that house or that house, as soon as there's one house, a sidewalk section would go in for all the other ones. As for landscaping, I assume that what I assumed is because you have landscaping proposed here along the sidewalk, those trees would go in when the sidewalk's put in, but otherwise you'd wait to landscape till each house is built, because otherwise you destroy the landscaping that's there.
Correct.
Okay.
So,
We just have to
so the trees, the street trees out in front of the houses would be built at the time that each house is built, or would be built. The trees would be planted. Sorry.
Yeah, because you're going to have contractors' equipment going back and forth in through each
Yeah, I
one.
know.
But again, you would plant the street trees that are along here to the bocce ball court.
Well, we're going to have a bond too. I mean, that's one thing I didn't mention. I mean, we're going to have a bond for some of this. So, I mean, it's something we can probably, you know, hash around when we have our meeting, or we can, again, we can still discuss it. And the bocce courts, I wasn't going to bring up the bocce courts, but being you brought up bocce courts, I'm wondering if they should be moved to the clubhouse area. They're kind of like hanging out. I don't know, Michael, do you know where they are?
They're across from this.
Yeah, they're right.
Right in there, yeah. They're kind of like hanging out in the middle, of nowhere, and I don't know, is that an okay thing? I don't know, I just thought it might be.
Look to the Italian. I've never played bocce.
I mean, I
in my
love the
life.
bocce courts, please, don't get me wrong. I mean,
I've never played bocce, I don't know.
oh, it's great, come on. Go to Cosimo's, they have a league down at Cosimo's.
I mean, I agree. I would think it would be better near the rec center, so it's all part of
Well, they have parking there.
an activity area.
I don't know, it's just, I wasn't going to bring it up, but being Michael did bocce.
Maybe laid on my
Well,
shoulders.
Fair point.
I know it's a big comment and a big decision, but that's what we're paid for, to make these big decisions.
We'll take this under advisement.
Okay, there
Discuss
you
it
go.
with our
Thank you
client.
very much.
I assumed it was located there just because it's closer to the housing and not part of the overall clubhouse complex.
I don't, this just seemed like
yeah.
odd that it was hanging out there in the middle, but that's all right, whatever.
Ms. Polidoro, any comments? Besides the sheep?
We have a lot to look at, and it may be that we schedule a meeting to go over the map and some of these documents together. The only other item that is lingering, I think, is again, having to do with sidewalks, asphalt versus concrete. And I just want to remind the applicant that if these are proposed to be town roads, you have to follow the town specs unless you do get a waiver from the highway super. And the town specs call for concrete.
Yeah, I did talk to the highway superintendent, and he said as long as the town doesn't have to maintain them, which I believe the HOA is going to maintain them, that he didn't have an issue with it, but again, we can get something in writing from,
Well,
is that all right?
I guess maintenance, once they become a town road, maintenance of sidewalks in a town can be complicated.
Yep.
Because towns, unlike villages, do not generally have laws which require maintenance of sidewalks by the adjacent landowners. So I think that's something we have to continue talking about, is how we're going to deal with maintenance. Because once they're in the town road right of way, it's, a town sidewalk. And so unless there's a law saying the neighbors are responsible, it could become the responsibility of the town.
In other words, the town board would need to
Consider
pass a law.
adopting a local law saying that sidewalk.
So for those in the audience who are interested, if I haven't bored you to death already, this district doesn't really call for sidewalks. It's the Greenbelt. It's supposed to be very rural and characteristic. We don't have curbs on the streets or anything else. But because it's site plan, under our code, site plan requires sidewalks and certain other infrastructure installations. Because this is a fairly dense subdivision, we assume that people will be walking, particularly to the clubhouse. There's also passive recreation trails that are going to be allowed to be developed somewhere in through here for people to walk through woods if they'd like to. So we were attempting to make sure that there's a safe way to convey pedestrians, and that doesn't just mean adults. It's also talking about children, people in wheelchairs, seniors, how they could get back and forth to their destination, the clubhouse, from say back here. And a sidewalk seemed prudent, but it's creating other complications, as you see, in terms of maintenance. Nicole, have you talked to your owner about this? Do you know if this is something that the HOA would want to do? I don't know how legally, I'm sure there's a mechanism to convey maintenance to the HOA. Mr. Alexander's looking perplexed as I say that.
No, I've just been fighting over this since the early 70s.
Then you're talking about potentially having the sidewalk outside the right-of-way, or would you have the sidewalk in the right-of-way?
I'm not talking
No,
about
I'm
moving
just
the
thinking
sidewalk.
I'm thinking out loud
I'm
here.
just saying if it's in the right of way,
Right.
that the town could consider adopting the law, which would require the adjacent landowners to maintain the sidewalks, thereby having the HOA maintain it. But without such a law, the sidewalk becomes the responsibility of the town, at which point the town would probably want concrete instead of asphalt to come full circle.
Right.
Let's bring this up at the technical meeting as well.
We'll think about it.
I'll take the opportunity. I believe Councilman Ray is here. Maybe he's not. There he is.
Sure.
So, Mr. Ray, this isn't in your district, but this is something to raise to the town board about whether or not there would be the appetite to pass a law to create a responsibility for residential property owners to take care of any sidewalk in front of their homes instead of the town, if it's in the town right of way. And Mr. Alexander, I can't believe we would want to put the sidewalk out of the town right of way, because then it gets really close to the houses and you have setback issues, et cetera.
That's where I was
That's a
heading.
big engineering redesign. I don't,
No.
we just want to figure out how to,
Yeah,
what's the solution to this design?
we will get there, I assure you. Any other comments?
That's it.
Mr. Murphy, any comments?
No, other than the sidewalk issue has been, since the early 70s. I'm glad that we made progress.
Mr. Pickett, any comments?
Originally, we had some discussions about having the guest parking down on Tree Line Court. Mine's not as bright as yours down around it here. And now it looks like it's proposed that you would put an alternate parking up across from lots 5 and 6, next to 14, right in there.
Yeah, the problem was the parking as proposed down here meant that it created even more difficulties with easements, because the parking had to be both on HOA and town, like split between the two. So this was a cleaner solution, and we all, in your absence, more or less said it's not that far to park, to go from here to here. In addition, this means that if anybody's throwing a big party, there's one central location for guests to park. So you would just say, just park over there, rather than there's 2 spots.
So you're going to have it across the street or next to lot number 14?
Lot number 4?
4 and 5.
4 and 5.
4 and 5, but not across the street over in the south
No.
east corner?
No.
Okay.
That creates the same
So
problem.
it'll all be gathered essentially at the
Okay.
beginning of the access easement area.
Because when we walked it, we said, oh, it's nice and open enough that we don't need any alternate or extra parking over in here. But then when you look at it becomes a little denser, when you're not walking it, we're just going to have buildings. Okay, I'm okay with a sidewalk on either side of the street, but I'd like, as he mentioned, to have the sidewalks up to whatever new construction is being planned.
Thank you. Anything else? Ms. Dexter?
Does sound like I'm amazed at the amount of legal stuff that has to be done for this, but I know that we'll get done. I had the opportunity to take a Dutchess County Planning Federation course recently, where they took planners and talked about accessibility and sidewalks, and I had to become visually impaired and try to find my way around with a cane, and I had to use a wheelchair. And having personally had to push myself in a wheelchair on asphalt was horrible. It was not a new asphalt. It seems to pit as it wears. It does not pit. It doesn't wear evenly. It had, and it was fairly narrow, and so it was not a lot of fun. And I'm like, oh my God, this is not good. And I had kind of been blasé about the sidewalks here, but having gone through the course, and in that course was a woman who is confined to a wheelchair. She's got one of those motor-driven ones, and they're almost, I would say, they're more than 3 feet. It's a huge chair. She lives in this thing. And she, at the end of the course, she said, think of me when you start talking about accessibility. She says, I can't get anywhere. They tell you that they have put in, access from the sidewalk to the road. She goes, if it's off by this much, my wheelchair gets stuck. So she said, just think of me. And so I'm thinking of her getting one of these townhomes and trying to get around on her own. She's trying to be very independent. And I would like for her to have a 5-foot wide concrete, very accessible sidewalk.
And how do you feel about it being on just one side of the street or the other?
We walked the site, and it really is fairly close together. I'm not sure we need it on both sides, but I don't know about that. But what I was thinking was that the one sidewalk, there are no houses, so there would be nobody to maintain them. So I'm not sure putting the onus on a homeowner
Well, the
That's great. I can get to the intersection and then I can't get any further.
The adjacent property owner would be
Across the street?
HOA.
It's the HOA.
Oh, it was the HOA. Yeah, and I thought we had gone back and forth about the sidewalks being on both sides and how that might really impinge on
It impacts.
all the lawn space.
It does.
And make it look like a sea of concrete,
Yeah,
so.
that's a consideration too, yeah.
And, you know, it is a fairly dense, so if we just had one nice, continuous, very accessible sidewalk, I'd kind of be okay with that.
And honestly, the other thing with the potential to go into concrete is, I mean, they're going to be pouring concrete anyways for the foundations for the houses. And, you know, if we're worried about the fact of the sidewalk's going to be in when the first building permit, you know, depending on how we come up with, you know, the phasing, you know, the concrete is much less likely to get damaged by further construction, you know, along, you know, the road versus, you know, the asphalt that could result in, you know, like damage from trucks, you know, going over it. So again, it's something that we can talk about, but.
Well, right on a hot summer day, if they're doing something, they drive over, the asphalt gets soft, right? And it leaves, it can sink, it can pit, it can get.
Thank you. That was very eloquent. Any other comments?
No.
Mr. Oliver?
A couple comments about the sidewalk. I think given the characteristics of the project and the surrounding neighborhoods, I think a sidewalk on one side of the road would be sufficient. Another thing to think about with the width between 4 and 5 feet, if you end up putting the sidewalk on the south side of the entry road, you're going to have to build those turnarounds if you do it at 4 feet, and then utilize the driveways in other areas. I think it might kind of get confusing and break up the continuity. And if you did a 5-foot sidewalk there and then a 4-foot there, my request is that whatever the width is, keep it continuous throughout the whole site and make it just kind of flow nicely. Thank you.
As soon as I forget what your degree is in, urban planning. Thank you. That does make sense. Ms. DiNapoli?
Sidewalks are important, as we've all been saying along the way. I had always had hope that we would have concrete sidewalks, and I would prefer the concrete, but I'm also concerned about the width, the 4 or the 5, because I know we've talked about if we go according to code of 5 feet wide, in terms of the plantings, it's going to, in time, uproot the trees or uproot the sidewalks.
It depends
Does
on
my
what,
memory-
it depends on the tree
Plan.
species and where exactly the trees are located.
They're on, right, what side the trees are.
Okay, because I thought that was one of the issues that the applicant had brought up, that with 5 feet wide, in time with a concrete sidewalk, it can uproot the sidewalk.
Even with a 4-foot wide sidewalk with concrete or asphalt, unless you, what's called root prune your trees, you know, take off the,
That's what they call them.
yes, then you can have heaving of your sidewalks. And a lot of that also does depend on what the variety of trees you put in. Some trees are more prone to doing that.
Does it also then interfere with 5 feet wide, the rest of the landscaping?
Do you mean the household landscaping that's proposed for each unit? Because the landscaping, as I recall, is closer to the house or the residences. It's not going to be out in the front. So what it is there's a grass strip, there's the road, then the grass strip, then a sidewalk, then the tree. So the purpose of this, of course, is to provide shade as people walk and also to soften the appearance, et cetera, of the house, to have, you know, a nice, big, majestic tree, lower their electrical bills as well. So the real question, we can locate the trees in areas that would still be not as damaging to the sidewalk. The real question is width. And what Chris said is just to make sure that it's consistent throughout, of which case it sounds like you're leaning toward the 5 feet, because otherwise, you're right, they have to do bump outs just to do the 4, or to create new landings to create the 4 here. And the real issue then beyond that is concrete versus asphalt. And Ms. Kane is not here, but I can poll her about which one she prefers, because it sounds like the board is not of all speaking of one mind thus far, but you prefer concrete.
Absolutely.
From day one, as I recall.
I'm sorry?
From day one, as I recall.
Yeah. And I would prefer to have it on both sides.
So let's talk a little bit about that. And I don't know what the relative costs are for asphalt versus concrete, so just putting that to the side. I'm concerned, even though I'm not the design professional here, that you've got a 50-foot right-of-way for the road. You're going to have 5 feet of sidewalk on both sides, plus the planting areas on top of that, and separating the trees enough so you don't have the heat issue. You're now going to have 70 feet of road, probably. I don't think that's an exaggeration. You're now overemphasizing the road is now deeper than any of the houses.
Mm-hmm.
I think I understand what you're trying to say about accessibility. I understand about integrating pedestrian-friendly walkability within this community. But I think the second side, it just you're letting the tail wag the dog, so to speak. The houses are going to feel weird. You're now basically the distance of the height of the house compared to the width of the road in front of it. It's just your whole balance. It's like having a church where the steeple's taller than, and smaller than the church height.
Mr. Alexander, if the right-of-way is 50 feet, how are you getting to 70?
Yeah, we're not going to get to 70.
I got 5 feet. If I have 5 feet of accessible sidewalk on either side, plus
Within
I need room. My tree line is going to be 5 feet. So your approach feel of the street line tree is going to be 70 feet.
No.
And
From,
I think
the
that's-
center line, here it is right here. From the center line of the road to the face of the curb, I think we've got 12-foot lanes. Then if you have a 5-foot grass strip, a 5-foot sidewalk, you're at 22 feet to the back of the sidewalk. That's all.
44 on both sides.
So, and we have a 50-foot right-of-way. So you've got 25 feet on each side from the center line. So to the back of the sidewalk, if we have a 5-foot grass strip, 5-foot sidewalk, it's only 22 feet. So that leaves another 3 feet.
I hear you on the math. I think you're overemphasizing the walkability and not the whole streetscape
For this
as a
house.
whole, for where this is located in your community.
We get your arguments so you don't have to continue
Yeah.
them.
Well,
'Cause
and
we may
just-
not resolve this, but I will weigh in myself that I'm fine with it being on one side. I think that maybe makes it definite. As for the concrete versus asphalt, obviously
We
I
hear
prefer
you.
concrete as well. And I can give you an estimate of the costs. I'm on the board of Dutchess County Planning Board, Dutchess County Community College. I'm on both, the County Planning Board too, sorry. We just got estimates for new sidewalks, and it runs anywhere from 130 a linear foot for a 5-foot sidewalk to, we had one bid that was 300. They were from Westchester, your neck of the woods, Mr. Alexander. Not from up here, where we're cheaper up here. But at any rate,
Transport costs.
it was a pretty wild variation there. But at any rate, and when I chaired the Hyde Park walks, the pedestrian task force, it came in at an average of about 150 a linear foot for a 5-foot wide, and that's concrete.
It becomes an easier task when it's only one side too.
Yes.
As far as the
Well, and when I
self-built
mentioned,
client.
the two sides, just to bring it up,
Yeah.
I wasn't talking about on the entrance road coming in on the south side. You don't have to put, there wouldn't be any need to put it on the south side, because as long as there's the sidewalk on the north side where the people at the first intersection could go cross over. So it would be just in the areas that there's houses on both sides of the road. But again, if the board, is good with, the one side, that's fine.
No, I'm just trying to.
And I'm just trying to make a compromise. I'm trying to make a
Concrete is
compromise that if we
definitely-
go higher with concrete, then I think being on one side is okay. The other thing I'll point out in the DOT manual about this is they're envisioning a lot of cross traffic when they talk about both sides. It's not just for residences. That's more aimed at commercial uses, where you're going to say park here and then walk and cross the street a lot. So you want to minimize, say, I think we'll be reviewing this later in the Bellefield development with the hotel. There are other commercial uses envisioned through there, so you want to minimize street crossings in that area, and you're also going to have a lot of visitors because of a hotel and commercial uses. I think the applicants have made a very good case that here, we know what the daily vehicle trips are. It's in your EAF. It's not high.
Right.
And I'm going to try to think of, like, if I were visual and impaired, I think if I lived there and wanted to go to the clubhouse, I think I could still try to figure out a way to go down around to connect to the sidewalk, or have someone help me wait until I know I can hear, whatever, that there's no traffic coming to get to a safe sidewalk, and then be able to move forward. That's just me, and I didn't take that course. I heard it was really interesting from everybody who went. Yeah, so I wish I had the opportunity to go there. But this should be enough for us to move forward to the technical meeting. And I don't have any other comments myself other than nice job with the latest submission. We're really close.
Yeah, really, yeah.
And I'd love to see this in the sales for next year.
Yeah, we want to see this built, yeah.
It'd be nice to have some, so for the audience as well, this subdivision is not a traditional subdivision, it's what's called a lifestyle. So the HOA, while they're not townhomes or condominiums, the HOA would offer ways in which to take care of your landscaping. So if you wanted to leave to go to Florida for the winter, everything's taken care of for you. So it's primarily being marketed, we think, at this point, at younger people who may be commuting, who don't have the time to come in if they're commuting down to Westchester or the city. They wouldn't have the time to do all of that other maintenance stuff, so it'd be handled for them. Also maybe for seniors who are downsizing but still want to kind of live in the country rather than being in the middle of the city. So to us, it's an exciting project, and particularly it gets rid of a failed subdivision that's been sitting there all this time being vandalized, and that's not a good thing for our community. So to the larger issue, setting a public hearing for final subdivision approval, do we feel like we're there? Yes, with the slight changes in the lot lines for, say, the waterworks?
Yeah, we could set the second public hearing so that they run at the same time.
So we could adjourn this to
But we should give
August
anyone
16th?
who's in the audience the
Of
opportunity.
course, I'm just thinking about for the future. So this would be going to August 16th and then set that one for August 16th too, so they could run
Concurrently.
concurrently?
To
Thank you.
August 16th?
Yeah. Would anyone from the public like to speak about this application? There hasn't been anybody so far, so I don't think you have to move yet. I hope this has been of interest to the audience here. We don't always get a lot of residents out. It's nice to see you. So may I get a motion to adjourn the public hearings on special use permit and site plan to August 16th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And a motion to set a public hearing for final subdivision approval for August 16th as well.
So
So,
moved.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And then are we trying to
Next-
set up the technical meeting this
Next
coming
week?
week?
Yeah, are you going to be here? Are you around?
I'm here all week. It's just we're also, I believe, trying to set a technical meeting with the applicants for the hotel project too.
All right, well, we'll figure it out.
I
We'll
think we were
coordinate
aiming
it
for
for next week
for
for sure,
Thursday,
because I think
maybe
we
for
want to
the
get this
hotel.
done so that maybe we're in a position at August the 16th to maybe consider,
Yeah,
you know,
I
a
think
conditional.
End
That'd
of
be
next
great.
week is probably really good for us.
Okay,
Anytime after Wednesday.
all right.
All right.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, for all your erudite comments. The next item on the agenda is a new public hearing for Right Homes Re-Subdivision. As a reminder, this is a 3-lot subdivision that was previously approved. It's located on Reservoir Road in Staatsburg. I believe a number of residents here are here to speak about this. Mr. Martin is here representing the applicant. In this instance, what is proposed is essentially a redrawing of lot lines so that an additional driveway could be created. In the prior approval, there was a single driveway that's an easement that all 3 homes that were approved could be located on. And the applicant is here, the owner, I should say. Realtors have suggested to him that it might be easier to sell the lots if there is a different access point rather than one single shared. So that's essentially what's come here. Let me turn it back over to you, Mr. Martin. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. Is that working?
You have to turn, I think they muted it before. It's on the bottom.
Is that working now?
Sounds like it to me.
Yes.
It's working?
Yes.
May I get a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ernie Martin from KC Engineering in Poughkeepsie, representing Mr. Dubelsky, Right Homes. Some of you may remember this is a subdivision that goes back to 2008, and it was approved at that time. A piece of property, it's about a 13-acre parcel located on Reservoir Road, and at that time we had a subdivision into 3 parcels, 3 lots. And it was served by a common driveway which served each of the 3 parcels. This property was put on the market by the owner in an attempt to try to market this. The owner is a builder. And of course, a combination of probably just the economic times we were in, the recession and all that, he was not successful. So based on discussion with realtors and then even from his own experience, he felt that maybe instead of having the common driveway through these 3 parcels and then a lot located to the rear of the parcel, what we did is we came up with a plan where the lot that was back here is now located up here. The other 2 parcels, although their configuration changes slightly, essentially there would still be 2 parcels there for a total of 3 lots. We're not changing the number of the lots, we're just changing the property line the property lines themselves. And the idea here is we would, yes, still have a common driveway up to this point that would serve lots 1 and 2. Lot 3 would be served by an individual driveway located approximately where the previous common driveway was located. The sewage disposal systems for lots 1 and 2, their location would remain the same. That would not change. However, since lot 3, the house, well, septic is all being moved to the front, those areas would change. If you may recall, there was a conservation area located for this parcel. The conservation area was for the most part located on the westerly side of the property. It still remains on the westerly side of the property, although somewhat smaller and narrower, but we also have conservation area located over here as well. We have of a primary concern when we first embarked on this change was visibility, sight distance, and things of that nature. This common driveway is located probably where there's an old farm road, to say the least. It hasn't been used in many, many years. We did do a sight distance analysis, and we do meet the town requirement. Of course, the sight distance for this particular driveway remains intact. The visibility there is good. So essentially, that's it.
Just a reminder, I believe we sent a memo on this asking for some information that we still haven't heard back from, and Ms. Polidoro back in February requested a copy of the open space easement, which I don't believe she's received yet, so we're still waiting on that. That noted, let me turn it over to the consultants first. Mrs. Otero, any comments?
Yeah, as part of what you had mentioned, we are waiting for the drainage calculations. We had a concern about water coming down through where the common drive was, and there's a natural flow of water that's onto the adjacent udder property. So Ernie was going to provide some basic storm drainage calculations.
And that's true, but just to kind of give you a highlight, there is a town drainage system that's located in there right now that discharges in a wetland area back here.
Mm-hmm.
It's the intent that some of this drainage would be directed, collected, and discharged into the existing drainage system. In addition, there is drainage that runs in a westerly direction
right.
towards the udder property. Right. We had some concerns relative to the separation of the septic system and a little water quality area, and we kind of worked that out with the health department. So a combination of a small detention pond and and then just kind of an overflow area here. So the idea is to keep the post-development equal to or less than.
Right, and again, that was on there. We just need some kind of calculations, to back that up. That's all. Just something.
Understand.
Just something for the file. And honestly, we don't want to increase the amount of water that's going into the town drainage system, because that discharges through our easement onto, I believe, onto the Wyant property across the street. And I don't want to create any issues for those folks over there, because that goes basically right through their yard. I think that was in our memo too. But again, that's just something to look at. So
it is in your memo.
Okay. So the other thing is, there's obviously going to be residents here tonight. We've gotten a bunch of written comments. Folks have stopped into the planning office about their concern, valid concern on in order to get the site distance for the common drive as you're looking. I guess looking left coming out of the common drive, there has to be quite a bit of clearing of the bank there. And I went out there the other day because I hadn't been up that way in a while, and I do think that most of that bank is gonna be rock excavation. There is several large trees that are growing in it, which is kind of like unusual. You usually don't see large trees growing, in rock outcrops. But I mean, you could see in several different places that there was surface rock on that bank. So depending on where the neighbors' wells are, that is definitely a valid concern, especially if the wells, are shallow wells. About hammering rock and having an impact on their wells, and so it's again I'm sure that we're going to hear about that, and it's something that we're going to have to look at. One of the ways that if we've had concerns, not that we've had this one, I don't remember in the past, but if we've had other concerns when neighbors have expressed potential concerns about their wells or septics, like resulting from a subdivision next to them, we have written a letter to the county health department and said, hey, while you're reviewing this thing, we heard about concerns on this particular topic, and we'd like for you to take that into account as you're reviewing this project. Now, the one lot that Ernie had mentioned, I forget the lot number, but it's the one that's going to have the single driveway. Yep. They, as Ernie said, they are moving the septic on that, so that has to go back to the health department, or is before the county health department. So that's one thing that we could do. The other thing is, we certainly have the ability to hire professionals that have more experience than I do in terms of, you're talking about hydrogeology. So again, I'm not sure we're going to get to that point, but why don't we hear, what the neighbors have to say. Agreed. That's pretty much it.
And we did, this board did contract with Chase & Companies. Russell Urban Mead is considered one of the best hydrogeologists in the county, if you recall, on a potential subdivision at the top of Molly's Way, because we had neighbors also worried about impacts to their wells.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yep, that's right.
As it turns out, Mr. Urban Mead was actually able to allay their fears, because the drawdown of water was actually going to be below where we thought it was going to. We're not affecting Molly's Way residents, but at any rate, that is a considerable expense to undertake. I just want to remind the board, hydrogeologists, it's a pretty narrow and special field. Thank you, Pete. Ms. Polidoro, any comments?
So the board set the public hearing to start taking public comments, but at this point, there's still not sufficient information to finish the SECR review. We're still waiting on drainage and blasting, and there are still lots of impacts to be identified. The board should consider whether the open space area has been appropriately cited, where it's being blasted and where it's going to be, I guess, denuded for the sightline easement, whether that is appropriately, called open space. And lastly, I'm hoping the applicant can provide some guidance with the sightline easement. Who are you proposing will be the grantee, and how is it going to be maintained, and how are you going to assure its maintenance? Because it becomes a safety issue.
Well, the intent was to deed it to the town, be maintained by the town.
No, we don't want to do that.
It's on without.
It is on.
We don't want to maintain a site easement for individual. Usually it would be granted the lot who receives the benefit from having the increased sight line. Usually that easement is granted from one lot to the next. So I don't remember. I think this site easement is crossing over sight lines. I mean, crossing over,
2 lots.
right.
Yeah.
So like the one lot would grant the other lot like permission to keep it cleared on their property. The town doesn't want to have any responsibility, you know, for site easements.
I
For
think,
driveways, for private like driveways. We do have some site easements for roads that come out at like intersections, but we don't want to be responsible for
Right.
private driveways.
the town may want the right to go in, but not the obligation, just in case
Yes.
they ever need to clear it. But, I mean, when it comes down to being between two parties and one party stops maintaining it, you know, you are gonna have a safety issue. So that's something to consider.
The other issue that you brought up is sort of a more, it's not a philosophical question. The purpose of open space is to allow for passive recreation or movement, basically, of animals. And the question you're raising is can you remove trees, essentially denude an area and still consider it to be open space? That's something for the board to consider. I would normally go to the board for comments, but would you guys like to hear from the public before? Yeah. Anyone, if you guys don't mind moving, we'll let people come up and speak. And anyone who wants to speak, just come up one at a time. Be sure and state your name for the record, that's all. Thank you.
Generally, the applicant would go and move. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brian.
Have a seat and speak into the
Right.
microphone.
Okay.
By the way, we're televised. That's the reason why we insist on this.
Okay.
People who are watching, I guess, get infuriated when they can't hear us like
Okay.
this.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brian Elliott. I appreciate you giving me the courtesy to speak here tonight. I happen to live right directly across from where we're talking about. Actually, I would like to be able to take this and go up and be able to point some things out of the map.
You can.
Is this on?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Hold it close.
Now, one of the things I would like to say is that back in 2008, when you approved this plan, that the original plan, okay, this was suggested, and at the time, the person was told, no, that's not going to work. One of the reasons being, and on top of my thing here, is safety. This is a blind, real bad blind corner. And even though the road is a 30-mile-an-hour road, we have children that come from Vanessa Lane up above here that are in their teens, young teens, 20 years old. They don't obey the law. You would have to have an officer there 24/7. And they come off this hill at about 50, and they shoot down through this corner. To me, it's very dangerous to put this in here. On top of which, there's a lot of things going on here. First of all, you were talking about the animals, and this whole area between this ridge here was designated what you call open space. Now, when the plan was granted back in 2008, the person took that plan and ran with it. He went through. He came in, he denuded all the trees up here. He cleared this lot off. This is ready for a foundation. And there's been a well drilled up in the corner here. He also brought this road in here and broke off, which good access to all these other 2 lots. I know for a fact that this other one has a well in it also. That's been put in there already. Now, by taking this green away and moving it up to this existing lot, this has already been cleared. There's nothing green about it. All the trees are gone. It's been bulldozed clean. So I have a problem with that. Plus the fact that the original plan is safe. Where it is on this corner is very safe for him to come off, people to come off and get to any one of these lots. I don't really believe that in my heart that this driveway is what's causing a problem of sale here. I think it's the fact that there's a power line that runs down through the center of this property. That's not for me to say. But what is for me to say is that I live right here across the street. Oh, actually, I'm here. And where they're suggesting this side of line to be all removed, all these trees, my well, and I paced it off the other day, where this bedrock is 60 feet from where this hammering and maybe blasting going to happen. And my neighbor who lives right next door to me, because this whole thing's going to be taken out here, and more so over here where the top of the hill and this line is, his is 70 feet away from the hammering and the blasting. There's other things here. All along where there's a ledge here. There's a whole rock ledge. In the springtime, after the snow and the heavy rains, we have like 2 or 3 natural streams, because I've walked through there and I say, wow, where's this water come from? There's no stream up on top of this hill. And I followed it, and it's actually coming out of the bedrock. It just flows. The springs are that close. It'll flow out, and it comes down, and it hits my neighbor's lawn here, George, where he has a natural spring right here in his backyard. And then there's a ditch that it hits. And these springs feed the Staatsburg Reservoir, which is a beautiful body of water down the street. It also feeds all of our wells, George's, mine, my neighbor who's here tonight. Everybody in this area is getting fed from these springs that are going to be disturbed. They're going to, when you go pushing up through there. The other thing is my home is a 100-year-old home. It has a fieldstone foundation, and my basement is the same piece of bedrock that they're going to be hammering and blasting on across the street. And when that starts happening, what's going to happen to my home? What's going to happen to my foundation? Or my new Anderson windows with all that, you know, if I took a rock and laid it here and put something on the end of it and started banging on it with a hammer, it would eventually rattle its way right off the edge. So these are my concerns. I'm trying to think if I could just look at my notes real quick, but I came up to the map to show you. There's a ledge that goes right up through here, and that's why they left this open. But of course, there's natural springs coming out of here. His home site's, the original plan, the way it is a doable plan, very viable, it works. Everybody in the community's been happy, satisfied with it. We had no complaint. We realized the gentleman bought it to try to make $1 here, do his thing. We're not arguing with that, but we are worried about our own, I want to say livelihoods, our own lives here. I've been in my home. My home's a 100-year home. I've been in my home for 30 years. My neighbor, George Utter, across the street's family's owned that home for over 104 years. My neighbor in the back here, he's been in his family home now. They've been there for like 85 years. My next door neighbor's been there for 85 years. And we've been paying taxes all those years. We're good. It's a good community. We're good community people. I just want to take a look at my notes real quick because I think I've pretty much said what I wanted to.
We don't have time limits here. Don't worry. I will, if people start getting redundant, I will, oh yes, sorry. I will ask you to only add new things because it doesn't matter how many times you repeat something. I promise you we take everything very seriously.
Well, as I get older, believe it or not, I find myself doing that and people get annoyed like, hey, we heard you the first time. Okay, I put down some of my main points here because I believe that every one of you has my letter. Hopefully you've had a chance to read it. I know George said that he sent one in. I also, my next door neighbor, he was going to be here tonight, but an emergency came up this afternoon and he wasn't able to make it. Mr. Wyant.
We have your letters. We have 2 of them were handwritten. Yours and Mr. Wyant's, and Mr. Utter's is typed.
Okay.
They're entered into the record, and I don't usually read all these out because the rest of the board's had a chance to review them, but they go into the record, and we do, however we address these, that will go into any resolution, whether that's for approval or denial, we refer to these, don't worry.
Okay, and that's all I can ask. So now I'm going to just hit real quick. I had some main points I'm going to put out, and that'll be about all I have to say here this evening. First thing above all is safety. I don't want to see somebody get killed here. I don't want to see somebody who buys one of these homes pull out there and, she might have a big SUV, so she's okay, but the kid decides he's going to go fishing down at the reservoir and goes rolling out on his bicycle, and one of our 19, 20-year-olds kill him. And that person will never be the same, and of course we'll have the loss of a young life. So safety is number one. That corner wasn't made for any sort of a driveway. There's an old, as the fellow said, there's an old logging road that's been there long before I even got there. I'm worried about the hammer drilling and the blasting so close to my well. I know if my neighbor was able to come here tonight, he's very upset about that. The fact is, if we survive on that. I need that. That's my well, what I use for drinking water, for showering. I lose my well, I'm in a bad way. Yeah. Also, the water flow and flooding in the yard next door to mine. And it's very true. I want to say something, Mr. Sotaro, is that they put in the road. They redid the road a few years ago, and they put drainage in there. But every spring, we have a problem with that because it collects it all up, it shoots it into the side there. The water backs up and almost comes into my garage. And it takes a while after the rains go for it to recede. And it not only, so we're already having, there's already an existing flooding situation, and it's like, it's done now. There's no going back. It's there. So we've been just living with it. But it also provides a lot of pools. The water sits there, so we're having a big mosquito problem behind us. And this is only going to exacerbate that situation, as you brought up, Mr. Sotaro.
Yes.
The other thing is, well, another thing, the removal of 75 and 100-year-old trees that are right across from my house, and I counted them. There's at least 12 to 15 of them that are anywhere from 75 to 100 years old. And you can't grow a tree overnight. And once you cut this down, we can't go back with super glue and stick them back up because, oh, it was a mistake. No, the properties didn't sell after all. That, once it's done, it's done. The other thing I have here is destroying precious natural springs that feed our wells. And if you bring the right person in, I'm willing to take them there. I'll show you exactly where these springs are that start every spring with the sun, the snow, and the heavy rains. They start going. And then, of course, as spring comes on, they die out, dry up a little bit. The one in George's backyard constantly goes. And it goes, he has a stream in the middle of his lawn that is there purposely. It's been there for the last 100 some odd years that purposely feeds the reservoir, all this extra runoff. The other things that I bring up is that, and someone said this, I would ask for a geologist to come in and take a look at this rock that they plan to blast or hammer drill out of there, and want to know from a professional how that's going to affect my home and my well. The other thing is the Department of Environmental Conservation, or whoever responsible for that, to come in and let's talk about this water that's taking care of the reservoir, which is, there's lots of wildlife down there. We have geese that come down there every year and have their babies. There is fish in there. A lot of things that I'd like to have the Department of Environmental Protection involved in. And then last but not least, if for some reason this was to ever go through, we as neighbors have to have some sort of bond set up to protect us. If my well is damaged, it needs to be taken care of. If my home is damaged, because my house and my foundation is sitting on this bedrock, I need to be compensated. And with that, that pretty much covers what I have to say.
Thank you for organizing your comments so nicely, and we appreciate you coming in, and I promise we will take every comment you made very seriously. Do you know if the springs are flowing right now through the Rock Ridge line?
No, at this time of the year, they kind of dry up. In fact, at this time of the year, where we live, it's first of all, the water table is very close to the surface. Mm-hmm. And it's a very fragile ecological system. Now, this year we've had a pretty good amount of rain, so my well's good. But in the years past, in the 30 years I've been there, I've had times where my water starts getting a little muddy taste, a little brackish, because the well starts drying up a little bit. And this is another thing I'm fearing of. We start messing with things that really, it's natural order, things don't need to be, messed with. Anyhow.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Dupree.
I just want to remind everybody, we live here too. We're your neighbors. We may not be your direct neighbors, but we don't want to see negative impacts on anybody who's a Hyde Parker. Simple as that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Hello, everybody. My name is Steve Athanas. I reside at 84 Reservoir Road. I live exactly right behind Mr. Elliott. I received no letter on this, and I feel I'm going to be taking the largest impact of this. I made up some maps of the blueprints that was given to me, and I'd like to hand them to you, if that's possible.
Sure, of course.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
So the house sits back about 250 feet. It's the little pink dot. All the green that you see is the wetlands that I'm surrounded by. All the highlighted yellow spots is the drainage. And it all runs through me. So, ever since they put the road in, that was when my grandmother owned the place. So I had no say-so. And the water level has drastically increased. It's a stone foundation, soft cellar floor. So every time you get rain, it comes up through the floor. And when you get a lot of rain, she lost her hot water heater during one storm. And so everything had to be raised up. So my concern is if he puts this right-of-way in there, what's he going to do with the water? Because he can't force it down on Mr. Otter's property because he's got water going to the reservoir. And I got all those small pockets that you see are green that feed behind my property. I even brought pictures if you want to see the landscape, or you're more than welcome to come over.
I trust you. You did a very nice job here. I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. Well,
seriously.
Because nobody considered me because I'm so far back off the road.
You should, no. This is within 150 feet of the site. He should have received.
Well, my
notice
driveway is right across from the site.
Yeah.
I received
It might
nothing.
not be within 150 feet.
You might have just been outside of it, maybe.
I didn't get notified. The only way I knew was Mr. Elliott told me.
But that doesn't mean you weren't considered, that's what.
No, I'm
public
just
hearings for
saying.
everyone.
I'm here now, so I'm not being bitter about it. I'm just
Just saying, your
I just
your
was
voice
just a lost soul in
carries as
the
much
night.
weight as anyone else's at this meeting.
At any rate, so your concern is primarily if the water is
It's going to be extra water, especially in the when
going
it's
to your property ultimately.
And that back stream that runs behind me, I constantly keep it clean. Even when my grandparents were there, we always worked.
So Pete, this is one of these wetlands is the receiver for the stormwater easement.
Yeah, there's, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, because we worked on the drainage back then, that the only outlet for the new drainage we put in there, I believe, goes on to the Wyant property.
Right.
Which leads around the
right,
ledge
which
and comes
I understand.
in.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But ultimately, so Mr. Athenas, the way you've drawn this, I'm just going to ask. I'm going to be kind of stupid here.
That's all right.
Where does your lot end? Because we don't see the lots on this side. Does this stream run through your property? Is that what?
Yeah, that's through the backyard.
Okay.
It's about 40, 50 feet from the back of the house.
And this is Mr. Wynant's property, I believe, right here?
Yes.
Next to you? So does your property kind of wrap behind his? Is that it?
I'm adjacent. I touch with his property and Mr. Elliott's.
Okay. And, okay. Pete, any comments?
No, I mean, I've already, I've already said that the project can't increase the amount of water that ends up onto, Reservoir. So we're aware of that, and I know from my time when we, designed this that it was, touchy there. So we don't want any more water going there.
So that means that all the water would need to stay on site?
Somehow.
Which means that Mr. Martin would need to work to redirect it, because if we're not going to increase the flow that goes onto the Utter property.
Well, there's a high point in the driveway, I believe. So from the high point coming down the Reservoir Road, we're going to have to do something, and maybe there's some kind of assuming that this proceeds, whether there's an opportunity for some infiltration there, I don't know. I mean, I'm not the designer. I'm just saying that we can't increase the amount of water. So the applicant engineer is going to have to come up with something that proves that.
So you can't just hook into the town drainage?
No.
And also, you got to take into effect that the weather that we have more and more, you know, it's getting more and more drastic.
Yep.
These storms are bigger. They're not as small as they used to be. I mean,
You're speaking to someone who agrees with that, but that's not always, as they say, exactly what the general populace accepts. Mr. Martin, do you remember what the soil composition here is? Is it Nassau Cardigan, or is it, do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah.
I'll go back through the files.
It's kind of a loamy, you know, kind of a loamy soil. It's not an A soil, it's not a D. It's
Okay, thank you.
Could you, just for the record, can you repeat what he said? I think he said it's loamy, it's mostly loamy, and type A, and
clay loam. It's not an A soil like a gravel.
it's not an A,
But it's not like a wetland soil.
and it's not a wetland soil.
So it's not, well, it wouldn't be a wetland. I've walked the site myself. It tends to be rocky up there, so it's going to be loamy, if not excessively rocky.
The percolation that we had.
If you're going to talk, could you use the,
thank you.
sorry.
Yeah, the percolation that we had for our septics was, you know, it was, as I recall, it was pretty decent. You know, it was in the 5 to 10 minute range.
Okay. So, well, anything else to add? Let me see if anybody else wants to speak. Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to do
fairly
this.
covered most of what I,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
so,
Thank
I
you.
mean, but that was my main concern, because.
Thank you. We don't want to see more water going onto your property, and I don't want to see your cellar flooding either.
And I really appreciate this map. This is
Yeah,
very
you
helpful.
can all keep them,
Can we
so.
keep them?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak?
Well, Cynthia needs one for the file.
Here,
We can
well,
yeah. Would anyone else like to speak about this application? Anyone? Okay, Mr. Satara, I'm looking to you for some direction, and also from the, well, first, any comments from the board? Let me start to my right, Ms. DiNapoli.
My most important comment is that I would like to go and walk the site. And I would like to have permission of the neighbors. You know, if I had to go on your property, just, yes, sir.
I actually would like, and I thought about this.
Could you, Mr. Martin, can you pass the microphone? Yeah. We've been trained by our former director.
He would be so proud.
Yeah.
I actually would thought about this. I would like someone to come with a long set of pants and a set of boots, and we have a meeting, a time and a.
Oh, wait a minute, we don't like that. If you're inviting us and we already have to wear like boots, that's a little suspicious.
Well, I figure a time and a date that I would let my neighbors know that we would be there to be able to take a walk and point out some of the things that we're discussing.
So we generally can't invite people to someone else's property unless the applicant would agree to that?
Yes, well, I would. I have no problem. Believe me, I'm very
We could go
concerned
to your
about this.
property, but in other words, the owner would have to allow you on when we go.
Oh, well, that's a different story.
That's A. B, I should also explain that if there's more than 4 of us who go, and we speak about the application to you, it's considered a public hearing because we have quorum. So we have to advertise the date and time. This is all.
Oh, that's fine.
I have to protect the board and the town because it would be an open meetings, violation of open meetings law, basically.
Well, if the applicant is willing, you could have an open meeting at his property.
Right. I know. I'm
Right,
just
and
saying
we've
we
done that
would have to
before.
make sure that's
We've done that
advertised, so
before.
that it's noticed for people, that's all. And that would depend on if there was 4 of us. What we try to do as a board when we do site walks, for example, in 2008, Ms. Dexter, myself, and now the ZBA chair, Mr. Bickford, we walked the 3 of us alone. We try to just keep it at 3 or less, because that way we can freely converse. And we don't make decisions, it's just that we can say, hey, did you see that over there? Otherwise, if there's 4 of us,
Well,
sometimes
yeah,
we
to
have
get
to.
too many
We have to
people
talk about
pointing
the
out too
weather.
much. I understand. Well, and
We have to talk about the weather, yes. We
this
can't talk about what
this
we're
is
looking.
new hat to me. I'd also like to say one more thing, and I'd like to say this to this gentleman here. I don't have any problem with you, selling your lots and doing what you do. I just ask you to, maybe to take a little time to have some consideration for us neighbors.
I want to say something. For many years, I work on the property. Every year, people dump the garbage from neighborhood. That is the problem. The water going nowhere. Nobody care. Several years ago, I work on the property. Somebody planted the marijuana. That you believe that? I kicked this stuff away because I can't work on the property. People watching me, what I'm doing. One day I walked to the property myself. I walk around 4 neighbors, they came and asked me who I am. What are you doing here? I will not know who you are. This is the biggest problem, because garbage, I can't say nothing. For many years, 10 years, I own this property, I can do nothing. I can say nobody nothing about what's the problem with. I don't think is there any problem with the water there. I don't see any problem. I walk so many times on the property, I don't see any problem. Even I do any site work, the hammering. I am doing the excavating for 30 years. I do gentle. I don't break anything. I built a house on Route 9, across the Anderson School or the nursing house. Yeah, nursing home. I built, nobody complained. Was the big lot, and how I built the house, no one complaining. It was nice, clear, finished. It's the same what happened over here. I take care of the property, I take care of the safety. This is why I want to do it. I want to clean the property. I don't want the people, neighbors, dumping more garbage on my property. That's why I want to do it. Because every year I'm spending $10,000 for the taxes, and nobody gonna give it me back, so I paid for less than years. That is my, I'm working hard. I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm driving tractor trailer to make the money, to pay the taxes, and I'm building on side the houses because I have to pay the money. I have children who is going to the college. My package is empty all year. I'm working more like anybody around. This neighbor, they complain about the water. Water is coming everywhere, but we have to take care of the water. I want to take care of the water. Thank you. I don't want to say nothing.
No, thank you. I just want to point out a couple of things. I don't think they're speaking personally against you. They're just expressing their concerns about what would happen to potentially their foundations or their wells themselves. It sounds as though the water level is high, and when you do, I mean, I don't want to make this the Michael Dupree show, but I have a personal sort of account to draw on. A neighbor across from me, my house was built in 1860. A neighbor across from me, there was a lot that, it was just a big rock outcrop, and they wanted to develop it. They developed into a beautiful property. They had to blast, not just excavate, but actually blast. There are blasting protocols established. In Hyde Park, all the ridge lines run north-south. They don't run any of them east-west. I sit west of this house. I didn't have any damage whatsoever to my house, and I have a soft cellar. I have Quasimodo could be in my cellar. That's about it, because it's about 4 feet tall. It's all dirt. There's constantly kind of wet down there. It's kind of gross, but we don't really use it as a cellar either. And it's also old flagstone foundation, et cetera. They added on to it a zillion times, and I've corrected it. But when they blasted for my neighbors downstream from me, so to speak, north of me, but kind of connected through ridgelines, it affected them. It affected. We're on town water, thank heavens, so it didn't affect anybody's wells. They did cause some damage in the basement. So I understand the concern that you're expressing, and my neighbors who live down below me live a lot further away than 60 or 70 feet. They live probably probably 400 feet. But again, what was happening there was it was blasted, and they wanted to form a basement that was nice and dry. So they got what they wanted. But it did do some ecological damage, we'll put it that way. Not permanent, just some damage along the way. And there wasn't a bond established, nothing like that happened. So the neighbors, rather than fight it in a lawsuit, just decided to do the repair themselves. Because we're kind of a happy neighborhood, and it sounds like you guys are too. It's actually not a bad thing. The people who buy your houses would appreciate that if somebody strange comes onto the property, your neighbors say, hey, wait, who are you? Because I have one of those neighbors myself, and we all adore her because she's out like a neighborhood watch person looking all the time. And Kate, you live near the house I'm talking about, the Bordens. You know what I mean. So, at any rate, but don't take it personally, because that's not what we want to see. We're trying to be impartial here and just evaluate what potential impacts there are. That's all. And I appreciate that you've been maintaining the property and paying your taxes on it too. And I understand the frustration of not being able to sell when that's what you clearly want to do with this property. The other point, though, that Mr. Elliott said it, but you heard it from Ms. Dexter and myself first too. I still think the biggest problem with this is that there's not a huge demand for single-family houses lately because we have a lot of housing still on the market here. And you have that electrical line, and there's this perception, some people say it's a myth, whatever, that if you're underneath more high-power tension lines that there's cancer. I think a lot of people believe that, whether that's true or not. So there are some limitations physically to the property. But we do need to walk it. I haven't walked it since 2008. It's been a while, and I need to see what's been cleared to evaluate the open space, et cetera. So, Mr. Martin, can I go through you to set up a meeting?
You may. And Mr. Dubelski said that he was okay with having you do a site walk.
Great. If Mr. Dubelski wants to be there too, he can be?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So I'll stick out some dates with us and then set a time with you guys. Would anyone else, any comments from the board besides all my blather? Yes? No?
I guess, just from my perspective, it's always good to hear from the surrounding neighbors because I think that they make, if there are potential issues, they are the eyes and ears for us because it's hard to say what might happen across the street. So this has been, for me, a very good education as to, all the wetlands that are there and the drainage work that was done on the road and the limitations that are just inherent in that area. So I just, I guess I'm a zoning junkie. I just like the process because it helps make for a better project at the end.
Agreed.
However it turns out, it'll be a better project.
And Mr. Sotero, so I know you're not a hydrogeologist, but I do have so the idea of a bond, is that what we would do in terms of?
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm not, as I said before, I'm not qualified to like assess, rock excavation impact on like wells. So honestly, that seems to be a primary concern here. It's, a seeker issue, and I think the only way we're going to get off, the dime here is if the board does consider retaining somebody that's got the experience just for that one, issue, because it is certainly a valid concern. So
board members, do you want to walk first to make a decision?
Right, I agree. I think we should walk it. Yeah, no, yeah. But I mean, you're asking what I think. I mean, we're going to walk it. We're going to see. I don't think it's going to change anything. But again, I was out there, myself, and. So we should keep, I assume we're going to keep the public hearing open.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, I can ask stupid questions.
No, we still need more information from the applicant's engineer on the stormwater calculations. We still don't have the original open space easement to see how that needs to change, all of that. There's still a lot of loose ends to tie up. But more importantly, I'd like to just have someone point to me the general vicinity of where those springs are, because it's really rare for springs to pop out of.
I mean, we can look at them in the field. That's going to be sort of, I mean, I know you're saying it's up. I mean, believe me, once you go out there, you know where that rock outcrop is.
Oh, I remember being up there before.
It's kind of cool,
It sounds like, I mean, so obviously some site changes were made based on the approval that we received, and I don't get on Reservoir Road very often, I have to tell you. That's probably one of the reasons why you guys like it. It's really local traffic over there. I mean, every once in a while I may do a cut through. That's about it. Yes.
To be honest with you, the original plan that went through, that he's already he executed it. The roads are there. The sites are level. There's wells up there. It'll work. It works.
Yeah, I remember there was no public comment last time on the original proposal.
That's right.
Because neighbors didn't object. I think it's the clearing to create the second driveway and the sight lines that's drawing all the objection. And I will say, to me, it's understandable because, again, the distance that you're talking about your well, and it sounds like the water table is high in this area, we'll need probably to have someone hired to evaluate potential impacts. So, any other comments from the public? I mean, thank everyone for coming out. Since we're still waiting for some material from you, Mr. Martin, do you want to continue this or adjourn this to August 16th rather than the first meeting of August? That'll give us time to set up a site walk.
Yeah, we do the site walk before that, though, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So making a motion to adjourn to August 16th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And I'll be emailing you to set up a time for a site walk.
Okay.
And if there's a majority, we'll have to.
We'll advertise.
do this in advance because we'll have to advertise it. Okay? All right. Thanks, everyone, for coming out, the neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do you guys want to bring follow on through? The next thing looks like there's less comment on.
I would break right before Bill.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is also a new public hearing for what is called Docio 4 High Street. The applicant is seeking approval to, people filled in, thank you, who want to speak. So the applicant is seeking approval to convert, Mr. Docio, to convert it, what is a single-family home to a two-family home. Do you want to add anything tonight?
No. I think I got all the paperwork in.
You did. Everything's been submitted. So if you don't mind, then, well, first, Pete, do you want to make any comments?
Well, we did receive some documentation from the engineer on his evaluation of the existing septic system that seemed to be fine. You know, I'm still not crazy. I understand High Street is not a very high-traveled roadway, but I mean, I personally don't like, you know, the parking spaces just, you know, backing out onto, you know, the road. I think you could very easily reconfigure, you know, the gravel lot so people could pull in and turn in and park and back up like and leave. But that's really up to the board. I don't like it, but it's my recommendation. But other than that,
did you draw out a design how you would like to see it reconfigured? As I recall, the last meeting.
I think that I drew something on one of your plans and I gave it to you after you know.
We didn't get a chance to see it. That's the reason why. So I'm not really sure what.
All right. Well, while you're
gabbing,
I'll
redraw.
I'll draw it on here and send it up.
Any other comments? Ms. Polidoro, any comments?
Just that because this application was only received a few days ago, it was only just circulated to county planning, so the board cannot take any action.
Action tonight, I know. Plus, we have at least 4 people who are interested in speaking. So before that, I'm going to assume that the board would like to hear from the public first. So may I get a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The first person to sign up is Mary Alden. Mr. Joseph, if you don't mind, we'll give the, thank you. I'm going to guess your mother's a former supervisor.
Yes.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And she was a great supervisor, in my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you. And mine too. Good evening. My name is Mary Alden, and I reside at 7 High Street in Staatsburg. My family has resided in this home since 1960, and I personally took ownership in 2011. In all of those years, High Street has been 5 single homes on a dead-end street, a very nice place to live. There are many concerns that I think we should be evaluated by the board before any decision is made to make 4 High Street a 2-family residence. Will there be 2 entrances to the apartments, and will there be adequate points of egress for safety from both apartments? Doors, not windows. If there will be another kitchen, laundry, and full bath added to the structure, will there be upgrades to the septic? As the upgrades are done, will the town inspect and give approval for them? Some work was done this past week. We did not see any sign of the town inspecting it before it was closed up. Do you know if there were any permits, and was it inspected by the town officials? If there are 2 apartments, it can be assumed that there would be at least 2 cars per apartment, or maybe more, and there would be enough, and will there be enough off-street parking for all of these vehicles? High Street has all kinds of trucks, garbage, oil, UPS delivery, and the only way they go up now is by backing up since there is no place to turn around. I would hate to think if a fire truck has to come up that street and the cars are on the road. Converting to a multi-family home on High Street will have a negative impact on the 4 single-family houses on this very quiet dead-end street. If approved and 4 High Street becomes an absentee ownership rental, it will not improve the neighborhood and will devalue the homes already there, as also the homes on East Elm and Grove Street, and they're all single-family homes. Ideally, we would have liked the Kimlin family to sell to a single family that would have fixed it up and lived there. But if it has to be a rental, please keep it as a single-family home and let this property be rented to people who would enjoy living on this quaint and special street. Staatsburg has many areas within the hamlet that suffer from the rental of apartments in single-family homes, and it has hurt the town in many ways. Please consider the historical aspects of the town and keep 4 High Street as a single-family home. All of the homeowners around 4 High Street bought their homes because there were no apartments surrounding their properties, and to change it now would bring down the values of our homes and continue to make the hamlet sadly in disrepair. Considering the terms and the amount the house was bought for, to have 4 High Street as a single-family rental would still yield a profit for the new owner and would at least keep the quaintness of the town and the street intact. Please vote no to giving permission to turning 4 High Street into a 2-apartment rental. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you leave, I'm just going to answer a couple of your
Sure.
questions. First, the New York State Building Code does require safe entry and exit, not just windows, when you convert to a 2-family. Second, what was done there did not require a permit. Actually, our engineer, Mr. Sotero, required the applicant's engineer to go through and physically watch what's going on with the septic system. So it was opened up and toilets were flushed, faucets were run, and we have a letter that we received from him. Again, Mr. Sotero required it to make certain the septic is adequate, because the way the Department of Health works is unless you're adding a new bedroom, which they're not, doesn't matter if you're increasing and adding a kitchen. I know this sounds illogical, at least it sounded illogical to me. I've been up here 12 years, so I've become accustomed to it, but it's only the addition of a bedroom that actually causes you to increase your septic, to expand your system. So adding a kitchen, even though that does mean more water, it doesn't, the Department of Health doesn't take that into consideration. So what they were doing was satisfying requests for us. The applicant has shown that he's got enough space right now for 5 cars to park adequately. What Mr. Sotero is sort of alluding to is there's one parking area where, unless nobody else is parked around you, you couldn't really get to it. So that may be something that the board would consider looking for, is to reconfigure the parking area. And our attorney, oh, she's not here, but our attorney,
be back.
Yes, our attorney can aver that the planning board cannot regulate ownership or rental. What we can regulate is what's in our code, and what's in our code is multifamily versus 2-family versus single-family. And in this district, 2-family is allowed. It's just allowed with site plan. That's why he's going through the process he's going through. But it would be impermissible and illegal for us to say we can't have rentals because it's going to lower the character of a neighborhood. That's not trying to say that I don't agree with you or think you're being silly.
And I'm not saying
legal.
that.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's,
if it was a 1-family rental.
oh yeah, it's just illegal. And last but not least, it's what do I say? There you are, Ms. Polidoro. What I was saying is we can't regulate ownership. You probably heard me while you were in there. So, but it also it's the other thing last is that the allegation that property values are lowered isn't something generally speaking that a board is allowed to do either. It's whether it fits with what the code dictates, because there are certainly people who, for example, live on 9G, and when they bought, there was an empty lot next to them, and now there's a Dollar General that went up. And we heard up here that that's going to lower my property values, but it's not something that we as a board can take into consideration. That's theoretically done when the town board adopts the zoning, so that it creates these lots that are next to them. So it's something we can consider in our heads, but it's not something that can weigh heavily into our decision making, if that makes sense.
And so does Staatsburg have historical district areas within it?
Staatsburg has many houses that are on the historic registry, and those require greater scrutiny, but those are the general rule about looking at impacts to historic or scenic resources or visual impacts. In other words, is something going to occlude your view of this historic resource, or will it somehow damage the resource and the enjoyment of it by the public, if that makes any sense. Victoria can outline this far better than me. Yes?
So as far as the impact from going from 1 to 2-family, if it's permitted as of right, the board can consider the impacts on this particular location, but impacts to the immediate adjacent neighbors isn't going to rise to the level of a community-wide impact or a blight or something like that. So the economic impact is hard for the board to consider.
Community-wide is, so the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRE we keep calling it up here because we abbreviate, is really meant to evaluate community-wide impacts. That doesn't mean it has to impact all of Hyde Park, but it's a broader area than just what is confined to, generally speaking, right next door. That noted, you just heard, I think, we look at all impacts for next door neighbors too, if they're something that we can measure and kind of assess better. The idea that you're going to remove a big ton of rock and suddenly stormwater is going to come pouring down to your property is one we can assess and say that's not going to happen, we have to redirect it. But it's a physical impact that we can assess. Looking at property values is more speculative, but what Ms. Polidor also mentioned when she said blight is any planning board is legally allowed to say, look, this is going to rise to such a large level of impact on values, et cetera, that it's going to cause a community-wide blight. And that could affect just the Hamlet of Staatsburg, and that'd be big enough. So, but all you said, in other words, we're taking seriously. I just wanted to say, I wanted to try to give you answers on some of it and point out that for anybody else who wants to speak, it's a claim because no one really knows what the impact to property values is until you sell, basically. So that's why it's anything that's speculative like that is hard for us to assess and understand, get a grip on, because we're just regular people like you guys. Thank you very much. The next person to speak is Linda Mayo at 8 Grove Street.
I guess I really don't have a lot more to say than what Mary said. I agree with everything she said. We're a very small community. We're 2 dead-end streets. Grove Street runs parallel to High Street. There are like 4 houses on our street. They don't even come down and plow. They can't turn the plows around now. They have to plow with a truck, a pickup truck.
That's right.
And
I've seen it before. That's right.
And if anybody parks on the street, you can't park on the street and get a snowplow by. You can't park on the street and get another car by. Somebody has to pull off if there's 2 cars on the street. It's the same thing with High Street. And we have enough problems with some of our landlord-tenant relationships in Staatsburg that I don't think we need any more. And I agree with what Mary said.
Thank you very much. I just want you all to know, too, I've walked your area many a time with candidates, Assemblymember Dee Dee Barrett, and I've walked it lots. I'm aware it is really a tiny little, so excuse the expression, it's darling back up and through there. It is nice. And it's super quiet. I understand. So I understand your concerns. Is on-street parking allowed in there right now? I've seen it, but rarely. I don't really see a lot of cars parked. I mean, even when I see visitors or when I see more visitors, they go in and park in the driveways, just stay close to the road. So, okay, the next person to speak is Mr. Carson, Stephen Wayne Carson on East Elm.
Well, I'd like to bring up the subject of the septic again. 2 kitchens, many people, we don't know how many, living in the house, lots of flushing toilets, lots of showers. Are there going to be washer machines and dryers, more extra water going into the septic? How big is this septic? What's the capacity? Is it 1,000 gallons? Is it 2,000 gallons? Nobody knows. We don't know.
Right.
A voice.
2,000?
1,000
gallon.
1,000.
Mister, I'm looking for the letter we received from his engineer.
Could it be 500?
He doesn't say.
Yeah.
All he says is that it's an engineer basically who's architect and engineer who basically says that the system is appropriate for continued use as a pre-existing system serving the 4-bedroom residence, and also thereby acceptable to serve the proposed change of use to a 2-family residential building with no increase to the total number of bedrooms and attendant design flow. Mr. Sotero, do you want to explain, or can you explain, is there a real logic behind why the addition of a kitchen doesn't impact septic, but the addition of a bedroom does?
Well,
sounds like the Goldman rule.
Pardon? That's just well. I mean, you've already said that the health department only requires a septic system is sized by Dutchess County Department of Health on the number of bedrooms in the house. So this current residence has 4 bedrooms. They're not, changing it. In fact, I think they may be even going to 3 bedrooms as far as the 2 units are concerned. I mean, if somebody's adding like a kitchen, it could be for like convenience sake. I'm not saying in this particular application, but I think it's the number of bedrooms and the number of people who will be occupying like the bedrooms, the number of people in the house is what really drives the sizing of, the septic system. Now, unfortunately, we can't go regulate. If somebody decides they're going to put 3 people in like a bedroom and have, an air mattress on like the floor, I mean, there isn't any way like to regulate that. And again, not saying that that's what's going to happen here, but we can only go by when an application comes before the planning board, similar like to this, the first thing that I look at is, okay, is there a change in the number of bedrooms? Because that's what the health department will regulate. If they're going to change the number of bedrooms, then it has to go back to the county health department. So in this case, they weren't. So knowing that Staatsburg is not the best as far as the ability of septic systems to function, I said you have to have your engineer go out and do some kind of a evaluation of the system and write like a letter, and if he feels that it's adequate, that it's functioning adequately. So he went out on July the 23rd. They pumped the septic system, or they pumped the tank. He observed the inside of the tank. It is a concrete septic tank. It appeared to be in good condition, and then they had pumped it out. We went back out on July the 10th once it filled up again, and was able to see that water was flowing out of the septic tank into the fields. Now, we didn't have them go and dig up the fields and try to figure out what was there, because honestly I don't think that's like prudent to ask somebody like to do. So they did enough investigation to at least say that visually it appears the septic system is operating. Now, if there wasn't any water flowing out of the septic tank and it was backing up, well then they know that the fields are a problem. But according to his letter, he observed the effluent exiting the tank. So I mean, that's unfortunately that's about as much we can ask somebody to look at if they're not changing the number of bedrooms. But again, knowing Staatsburg, we knew that, hey, we should at least look at as much as we can look at what's there to at least make sure that it's functioning. So that's what we did. And you don't seem really satisfied with that answer.
Well, what,
I mean, I don't really know what more we could ask them to do, well, short of having them go to health department, and I don't think that that's
within our purview.
That's really not within our purview, because they're not changing the number of bedrooms in the house. So,
what with 2 apartments, what would the number of bedrooms be?
Well, typically,
what do we got on the map? 3 bedrooms on the plan?
2 upstairs, 1 downstairs.
Right.
So he's reducing the number of bedrooms
from 4 previously to 3 now. And again, those are on his plans. So again, knowing that Staatsburg is always a problem, we did still, even though they were reducing the number of bedrooms, we still said, hey, look, we really want you to take a look at this. And they did, and they did a good job.
So for the 2 apartments, there'd be a number of 3 people in the house.
We
right?
can't
Sir,
regulate
we can't regulate people in the house.
People in each bedroom. It's number of people that create the water usage and the sewage usage.
It's
the
not
number of people.
It's not the addition of kitchens and washing machines.
You sit down for 3 meals a day, or and you drink a certain amount and create a certain amount, each person does that. All right, whether you do it in one kitchen or two kitchens, it's still the same number.
I find that hard to believe.
I'm not disagreeing, but I'm telling you.
I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I think the
It's
addition of a kitchen and you have another.
It's a fact.
You have another washer.
You got to show me then.
You have another washer. It's going to add volume to the water, to what goes out. That noted, we're only assigned a task of looking, does this fit within the site? Does the use that's proposed fit within the site, and does it adhere to the code? In other words, Dutchess County Department of Health is a higher authority than we are, and unless there was a problem that we would then alert them, there's nothing we can do to bring him in because he's actually reducing a bedroom as well. And they don't consider the addition of another kitchen to be anything that affects septic. Again, I don't always follow this. I'm not an engineer. Mr. Docio, is this on town water? Yes. So all of Staatsburg is on town water now, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I've been to the Linvilles for several parties, and when it's been raining, I know what Mr. Sotero is referring to with the septic situation there. Fortunately, this house has a little more distance from it than some of the neighbors do when you're down further in the hamlet. So, again, what we're here to assess is, does the use fit the site? And the fact that it's been 4 bedrooms and is actually going down to 1 would indicate that for most of what we look at here, it fits. So, any other comments?
3 people to a bedroom?
10.
No, you can't do 10. You can't do 10.
How can you guess? How do you know? How do I know how many people live in your house?
So I'm worried about the clientele that will be next door to me.
It's not something that the planning board can regulate. I hope you understand that. It's not something that the planning board can regulate. That basically would be us being discriminatory in advance. I'm sympathetic, but I mean, that's not something we can consider.
If you give Mr. Docio the permission to make this one family dwelling into 2, then you do have something to do about it.
Again, it's a permitted use. The town board has already basically stated, past town board, not the current town board, when this was adopted in 2005, that 2-family is allowed in the district. That's part of it. So I don't like saying this because people hate me when I say it, but the time to raise objections was when the code was adopted in 2005. Beyond that, you could certainly take this up with your council member and say, we think the zoning should be changed so that 2-family is not allowed in the area at all.
So some of the issues the board can look at. So it's a permitted use subject to the board finding that it actually fits on this lot. So things that are within the board's purview. Is there adequate room for parking for 2 apartments? Is there a way for multiple cars to get in and out of the driveway? Will the layout, does there need to be an addition to accommodate the 2nd apartment, and will that addition impact the neighbors? So those are the kinds of issues that the board has to look at right now. Just whether the use fits, but the use itself is permitted by the code.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
The next person to sign up is Brian Lee and Diane Topkis.
Mr. Chairman, good evening. Board members, thank you for the time tonight. This is Diane Topkis, and I'm Brian Lee. We reside at 7 East Elm Avenue, just kitty corner to 4 High Street. So we share the corner.
Actually, our High Street runs into our driveway.
I know where you live.
Oh, okay.
No, I just realized. That's where you live. Okay.
We just want to share some of the concerns we have and some of them in the form of questions. The first concern is just really with the changing to a 2-family property is that it seems as though the home will forever be a rental property at that point in time, especially given the external changes that are going to be made in terms of adding of doors, 2nd story stairways and the like. it will likely never return again to a single-family dwelling. All of the surrounding homes, as you've heard tonight, are owner-occupied, cared for, and improved with maintaining the village feel of the hamlet and the neighborhood. On Elm Street, our recent experience with non-owner occupied homes, which I know you can't have jurisdiction over, but the rental experience was extremely poor, including ongoing police visits, uncontrolled pet dogs escaping and threatening neighbors. And as neighbors, we really have no say over the prospective renters, but obviously must live with the actions and consequences with little recourse. The proposed site plan outlines 4 parking spaces, as Ms. Alden has outlined. We know of no assurances, however, that no additional vehicles or equipment could be stored or parked on the property. So this could be recreational vehicles, boats, tractors, RVs, whatever that may be. There is no space, as you've heard, for on-street parking on either High Street nor Elm Avenue. Many commercial, as well as public works, sanitation, and state vehicles must back up High Street, and on-street parking would impair or prevent snow removal and hamper large vehicle traffic, such as trash removal. In addition, the south, north, and east elevations all show long staircases and additional doors and a door wall that detract from the appearance of what is today and has been a classic village home. With these changes, it's very apparent that this is now going to be a multifamily home. And it would be the only house within, or that I know of, that would have such structures hanging off the outside of the building within our part of the village. Certainly there are existing multifamily buildings both in the hamlet as well as the rest of Hyde Park, representing other insufficient rental opportunities nearby to the village. Unfortunately, 2 of the examples of multifamily buildings in the hamlet are poorly maintained. One is now vacant. It's right across next to what was the restaurant, Portofino, and is now an eyesore and creates, unfortunately, a very poor impression of the village. I do have a photo if you need to be refreshed on what it looks like today. So thank you again for the opportunity to share our concerns with Planning Board. We certainly would prefer that it remain a single-family residence of some kind, and ask for your consideration on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the only thing I would add is, I mean, I understand multiple family homes are permitted as far as zoning.
Just 2-family, not multi-family.
2-family. Okay, good. Glad to hear that then. 2-family. But our concern in general, and the neighbors you see back here, we're all a very tight-knit group, all own our own homes, and it is, as you said, a darling neighborhood. The characteristics is a very tight-knit community that we all live and know our neighbors extremely well. So the concern is to have renters. I mean, quite honestly, in the area, they could be wonderful. They may not be. Our experience recently in the last couple of years has been horrendous, quite honestly. You know, so that's all of our fear, and I'll just speak for all of my local neighbors.
The honest truth is that the rental the experience usually with renters is somewhat dependent on the landlord.
Absolutely, and so we
that's really the truth.
To help us maintain the neighborhood, and take a personal appeal to you to help. You know the neighborhood. I know your in-laws are in the neighborhood, so hope you would scrutinize who you rent to and help us maintain that.
The other issue,
Personal appeal to you.
so the other issue you raised that we do have some control over is additional storage, like rec equipment, additional vehicles, et cetera. That is under our purview. We will discuss that more. Boats, I don't think are allowed to be stored outdoors all year round. I have to look in the code for that. This is not my area of expertise. They'd be the zoning administrator, is the zoning enforcement officer. And as I recall in the code, you're allowed to store 1 unlicensed vehicle outdoors, but more than that can't be stored. I think you can do the whole thing, because we had people, when they were trying to pass a law about not having unlicensed vehicles on a lot, I remember people coming into the town board at the time saying, my son's in the military, he's not going to pay insurance, we take the license plate off. So you can always think of some circumstance. The other thing I should add to everybody is, so when I say that this is permitted but requires site plan, that means that we have to look with a little more scrutiny at how it fits within the site. That's all that site plan is. Now, multifamily is not allowed here, but in some cases where it is, and you heard earlier, I think all of you were here, for the enclave, that requires a special use permit. If this required a special use permit, then a lot of what you're discussing, which is character of the community, comes into play, but it doesn't. So in other words, that's permitted, but you have to jump over 7 more hurdles, 7 criteria in order to get your SUP, your special use permit. But when it's permitted as a right, it requires a site plan review. This is what the process is, as Ms. Dexter referred to, is we hear from neighbors and we factor it in and see if we can do something about how it fits the site. But again, I'm very sympathetic, actually to both sides. When I was in college, I was a renter, and when people would look at me as though he's a renter, scum, I wanted to kill him. But instead, I just made sure I kept my lawn maintained and the gardens put up, and everyone wound up saying, "Oh, model Reno renter." But I know that it's upsetting at times, and certainly in my own neighborhood again, neighbors proposed an accessory apartment, and whew.
Oh, Lord, yes, that's right.
Sure.
They all
People up here remember, I had to look at my own neighbors and say, look, we already have 2 accessory apartments, and that's the standard, is that it changed the character of the neighborhood. So the addition of 1 more is not a tipping point, and I thought they were going to kill me for a while for voting for it, but they didn't. Everything's worked out to be fine. So, but I know that when you change the character, or when you change the neighborhood, it's upsetting to people who've been there a long time. So, but I promise we were thinking about this. And again, you heard from Ms. Polidoro, we can't vote to approve or anything tonight because this is required to go to county planning, and they have 30 days in which to reply. So thank you very much for coming out tonight and for organizing your statements as well.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the public who didn't sign up who'd like to speak? Because you don't have to sign up to speak. You're welcome to. Okay, Mr. Docio, come back up. We heard a lot tonight. Again, we referred this to DC Planning. I want to thank your consultants for getting all the necessary paperwork to us, corrected each time for the small stuff. I think Mr. Sotero, did you draw the new parking area?
Yeah, it circulated. I don't know if anybody.
We all saw it. I'm not sure if the chairman did.
Oh,
I don't know.
Who's got it?
I have it back.
Oh.
Well, don't bother to show it to me.
All right, we can
There's
talk.
5 others up here. Did you guys like the idea of the revised parking area?
It looked pretty simple with the little bump out. Like that would be nice, just to,
Turnaround area.
Yeah.
I just think it's better than having cars backing right out onto the road. It's not that much of a cost to
Chris,
do
any
it.
comments?
Well, after hearing the public comment and so many things we have no control over, one of the issues was on-street parking, and I mean, it would be rather simple to do what Mr. Sotero was asking, and that might be a way for you to, kind of give back to your community a little bit and ease their fear of having cars on the road.
Huge.
Yeah, no, I have it.
Effort to move some of the parking. It is a big yard.
It looked pretty easy, so.
Okay.
And do you want them delineated with curb stops? No. Or just wide enough that 4 cars can fit?
Board?
I'm sorry, couldn't hear what you said.
Would you like curb stops? I mean, if you recall the...
might make it look too commercial, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. That would be the character of the neighborhood.
I think we just need to make sure that the individuals who wind up renting the space, if they have a party or a dinner party or whatever, that there's adequate parking for those individuals who come and not on street. And I would encourage everybody who's in there to contact your council person to see if there's a way to not have on-street parking in that area.
Yeah, put a sign saying no on-street.
In other words, the appropriate person would be, she'll probably kill me if she hears this, but you guys maybe already know it's Emily Svensson is your council person. So give her a buzz and contact her and explain what the situation is. She'll contact me and then I'll go through what we just did with her as well. If that's how it works. But we're happy to try to accommodate you. And it sounds like the on-street parking is a big issue that we could help with you, on. And nobody wants to not see you truck plow during the snow. And we also, your renters, whoever you wind up having as tenants, they're not going to want to have a guest car knocked about by safety equipment, delivery people, et cetera. So I think we requested an expedited review from county planning. So should we adjourn this to August 2nd? Making a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so our meetings are televised. They're live broadcasts. You can also watch them on the town website. There's a way to click onto it. You can also go to YouTube, put in Hyde Park Planning Board and see them. But if you want to see the next iteration of the plan, you're welcome to come back. This will be a public hearing still. You can speak, or you can just wait and see what we hear from county planning and what the board decides to do and everything else. Okay? Thank you again for coming out. We appreciate it. And thank you, Mr. Docia. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. If I could just say something too? Like,
Sure.
Yeah,
If you speak into the microphone.
what I want to say was, as far as Staatsburg down here, I grew up in Staatsburg. I lived there 42 years. So I'm not just, fly by night, coming to town, fix up a house, rent it out. That's my town. That's my home down there. You know what I mean?
I do. I've actually worked with you through Monica Relia.
I probably got 1 million hours riding a bicycle down there. So, and as far as any changes to the house, there's no extra doors or stairways or nothing that, the house is exactly the way it is when I was a kid there. So, and I've been in a house when I was a kid, and one of the guys I bought the house from is going to remain a
tenant.
Yeah, a tenant there. So, that's my home too down there. So
I appreciate you saying that.
That helps,
you won't remember it, but I've worked with you before through Monica Relia with the Visual Environment Committee. You helped with some signs and some other stuff. So I know who you are, and you actually do quality work from what I can see and remember.
Right,
so.
I'm looking to clean up the house. It needs a little cleaning up, and so that's what I tend to do.
It's good to hear you say that. Thanks you for saying that.
So
Thank you for saying
yeah,
that.
I'm not gonna, it's not gonna be a frat house, and it's, none of that stuff, So.
Well, there have been experiences from their neighbors, believe me, where this has happened. We just went through one where it's a big problem, and the town is considering anti-nuisance party law, I believe, to control it, because it's multifamily, it's allowed, and it's used to rent to students. And I have no objection to renting to students. I was a student once myself, but the parties are apparently getting out of hand, and it's causing neighbors to have real problems. So it's been addressed to the town board, which is the appropriate venue that way.
Right. No, I mean, Staatsburg is a nice, low-key, quiet place. That's how I, want it to remain. So.
It's the place where the bagpipes play, as I tell people. So anyway.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for,
I
yes,
hope the
very
neighbors
much. Heard, yeah.
Michael, does he have to leave those places in his next meeting to see if
I think we could make that a
See you on the
condition.
Okay.
If we want to
See
make
you on
that a
the second.
condition.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want to have another, I'd rather not have him spend more on another plan just to show us,
No,
but
we
it could
can
be a
make that a
condition.
condition if we're
Because it's
gonna
relatively
approve.
minor, yeah.
Then we have to attach Pete's drawing.
Yeah,
Or attach Pete's drawing. We'll figure that one out
Some onions
at our
down
next
there.
agenda meeting, okay?
Yes, that's it. See you in the
Yeah,
second
thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
The last new public hearing for the night is for CIRE of Dutchess. This is a request for an extension of time to commence and complete construction at 4185 Albany Post Road. This is the empty lot where you now see the DOT or the contractors putting their equipment in, where it says medical suites coming soon. Making a motion to open the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I went by today. The stone wall has been 99% repaired. There's a capstone that's missing, and Mr. Baxter he thought he was in Florida and paid the guy thinking it was all done. I sent a screenshot, or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I did a picture and sent it to him, so the guy's looking for an appropriate length. They had to come out and measure it to get what the right capstone is. I did go behind, and there's, just like Mr. Dubelski said, people from the neighborhood dump a lot of yard stuff on it, and I didn't want to plow through there, so it may be somewhere down back in there, but if it is, it's split up. So what I was suggesting first is, would there anybody who'd like to speak about this application? Didn't think so. What I think we should do is adjourn this to August the 2nd and give them time to finish the repair. Does that sound okay to everybody?
I make that motion.
Thank you, Chan. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The team has been interrupted. I know you guys have been patient all night. Would you mind if we took a quick break up here? Thank you. Do you have any no-dos or coffee?
Have one of the browns.
That actually would be a good idea.
All the way.
I got a little bit.
Yeah. You need a little bit of sugar. What do you want? Sorry.
boxed in here.
Brownie? Are they hatched?
They're really good. As always, I'm elaborate.
I'm expanding the repertoire.
Scott. Where's the?
Which one? Which one?
Hey.
That's right.
Oh, sure.
Right.
I don't know, not me. I have those here.
Wasn't here. I think.
Can I give you those here?
Yeah, but that's those are Michael's. It might be back. Those here. CIRE's done. Yeah. I think it's down. I think it's down here.
Wait, say it again? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
What do I do now?
Oh, don't worry about it. You probably took more of me.
Been out on your boat?
He has different style boats. I'm not a boat person. I don't like boats. So my experience.
Oh, really?
Oh, you like fishing?
Yeah. So he goes on his boat and hangs out. Sits on our
Imagine that.
I need to go with a short boat. So I actually got back today.
Oh, yeah?
Ooh.
With
the boat?
Yeah.
Where do you go down the Hudson?
No, I go, I trailer it to Point Jupiter near Narragansett.
Okay.
And drive out to the Black
Nice.
We'll go out 30 miles. Four guys.
Oh my God. Oh, that's awesome.
30 last time.
Yeah, well, yeah. This will take a little while.
Oh, you there? Okay. Yeah. We'll fly through all this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you can't see the horizon.
So I got my head Yeah.
Were you at a?
Oh.
Like I fell asleep.
Castle.
Should we do the Castle Bar?
Good, we'll make it now.
Should we do Katie's site plan waiver up ahead?
Seriously.
Michael? Should we do Katie's site plan waiver up ahead?
They want to go ahead and present. I don't want them to. Look, they're already out here anyway.
Oh, hey, got Katie.
Brent, yes. Hi. Brent, thank you.
Hit on a couple of high points.
Hi, Tom. Good to see you.
How are you?
This is a nice receiving line. Nice to see you.
Oh my goodness, this is like a tag team up here.
Woohoo.
I'm telling you, it's a tag team.
Good. How are you?
Good.
Yeah.
These guys look like you were holding.
Larry, how you doing, buddy?
Good.
Hey, Tom. How are you? How you doing?
Everybody ready?
True, she keeps the record.
Hey, Mike.
Thank
I'll take notes on it.
That's a, you got extras? All right, that's fine. Thanks.
I told them, I'll do it.
Oh, you were brave. That's right, because you handed them out.
But I will never do this again.
Before we begin, I want to point out that the vice chair who hands out who takes notes took one for the team, and she assigned it to herself on this one because we expect to have a lot of note taking here. So, the next item on the next item on the agenda is we're in workshop mode. There is no more public comment for the evening. This is at long last. And Ann and I are particularly excited because we were here the first time this got approved, conceptually, and worked on it extensively. So this is Bellefield, as it's known now. It's in the Bellefield Plan Development District. The applicants received conceptual approval years ago and are back finally ready to move forward with the first sub-phase of what we hope will be many phases. It's an exciting project. And before I go on, just to make a note for housekeeping that the town board and the applicants have worked through, since the sewer district was never formed, they've worked through alternate mitigation. It's all been signed, sealed, and delivered. And I want to thank you for all of your cooperation and all your efforts so far, and say we're really excited to have you here now, finally, before the planning board again. So with that, I know everybody, but as you go through and you do any presentations, please, I don't know everybody. There's one face I don't know, but please make sure you introduce yourselves, okay?
Yeah, I'll start by introducing the team, and we're very pleased to be here this evening. It's been, I guess it's been a quick 10 years from the
precisely
from the concept approval to today, and as Chairman Dupree had mentioned, we had been working in recent months with the town board to bring closure to the sewer mitigation. That was a very positive meeting, very positive outcome, and so again, we're excited to be here tonight. So with the team we have tonight, starting here with Bill Hoy, is with the Shaner Company, the hotel developer. Next to Bill is Chris Laporta with Chazen. Jennifer Van Tile, Land Use Council with Cuddy and Fader, a familiar face. Larry Goudreau to Jennifer's right with Chazen. And then Tom Mulroy and Mike Oates with Bellefield, and Dom Jogadio with Bellefield as well. So, we're pleased to have our whole team here tonight. And so with that introduction, I'm just going to briefly put together some...
I'm sorry, I can't quite see what you're saying.
A little bit higher? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I was reading sign language that I couldn't quite follow, so...
So what we want to do in terms of introducing the project and the property is to start with some never seen before drone footage of the 340 acres. So, so with that, Chris, hit it.
Is there music?
Oh, you want
on its full screen with the footage?
Yeah. This is my biggest fear, the technical side of this. So what we're looking to do here is just give, oops.
Can't go full screen. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, what this is, it's doing, it's giving some footage of, I think actually Tom Muller, I believe, is the actual pilot of the drone on this. So, you know, well done. But it gives you some context of the site itself, with the culinary campus in the background. You know, the river. I think as we start to get further into the planning of the hotel, using this sort of technology will be very, very helpful in really getting a sense of the building, the siting, context of everything around it. So you can see some of the dramatic views and things like that that the hotel will have of you know, really just, you know, classic Hudson Valley view corridors. So so that's something we wanted to introduce as a you know, a starting point. And then as this rolls through, what I'm going to do is the next part of the presentation, going to turn the mic over to Bill Hoy and have him start to step through some of the actual elevations of the hotel. That's the structure that can be seen. You know, my understanding is that is a old wine tower from that the Jesuits used, you know, back in the previous history of this property. So it's, you know, it's very interesting.
Water tower?
Is that an advertisement? My grandson has one of them, I think.
Yeah.
The wine tower.
So,
Actually, it's a California style water tank.
It's actually, no. What it is
that it?
I meant to say wine, not water.
You did say wine, but our town historian has literature that it's California in style, with the stone base that partially collapsed. That's what she just sent that along to me. That's all.
Okay. Well, it'll be some fun finding out the history of it.
We're drinking.
Cheers, yeah. But anyway, so I think we've seen enough of the drone footage, and if we could go to the first rendering, I think that'd be great. So, Bill, you want to start here?
Good evening. My name is Bill Hoy. I'm in the Shaner Hotel Group out of State College, Pennsylvania. And we are very excited to work on this project. And we had a brief introduction to the chairman, and we were here about a month and a half ago. It was very exciting to see how excited everyone seems to be on this project, because we just came into it about 6-7 months ago. So one of the first things we wanted to look at is the master plan and what was approved here 10 years ago, or started 10 years ago, and start putting the architecture together that was approved in those earlier on design charrettes. And with that, our chairman, Lance Shaner, he just really enjoys historic architecture, vernacular architecture from where we are. And even though this is a Marriott branded product, is what we're trying to use here, a lot of times, as you well know, you have prototypes that you have to work through. What we try to do is take those prototypes and pull them apart to what makes sense for the particular location that we're at. So with that in mind, we had a great tour of the CIA to kind of get the architecture and understanding of that, looking at the documents that were already approved, then trying to integrate some of the design that is in the Upper Hudson area. We looked at the Red Lion Inn. We looked at the Montauk structures and some of the Adirondach type of architecture that's around here. And so this is our first design that we worked on, and this is probably, I should say the first design shown to you, but this is probably our 5th or 6th alternate designs that we had to come up with to make everybody happy internally, that we wanted to do the best we could for the historic context of where we're at. So what you're looking at on this elevation, the east elevation, is the front of the building. And again, we're trying to bring in some of the red line in type of motifs here. The red brick is a kind of an area that we're looking at from the CIA, trying to bring some of that red brick in. And then some of these structures down in here is some of the, what you're seeing at the Montauk. Again, that water tower that he showed, some of the stone, we want to look at some of the materials. When we get into the materials that matches some of that kind of stone, that would make sense for this location. So that is the front elevation as you pull up around. That'll be facing to the east. The next slide. Do you want to talk about this as we go, or you want me to just give you the whole?
It's your initial presentation. Just go ahead and go right along. You'll see that it's the same way even when we're in workshop.
Sure.
I'll call on each individual member as well as our consultants for comments.
Right. So this is the Route 9 elevation that you're looking at. And put it into perspective, from driving on Route 9 to where this elevation is here is about 30 feet. Plus or minus about 30 feet to give you an idea. So it's a 5-story building. So when you saw that drone view, these rooms up here are going to have that type of that view across the whole valley. Hudson Valley, looking over that. It'll be spectacular. So we wanted to, again, try to bring in some of the same architectural elements on this side, but a little bit more of the red brick facing the CIA area is what we're looking at on that side. Then these are just the end elevations. Kind of give you a perspective of how you pull up to the hotel, and looking at the end would be more red brick.
Could you please make sure that you're talking into the microphone? You're kind of fading out a little bit. Thank you.
It is 9. It's past my bedtime. So. Next slide. This is kind of hard to read, obviously, but I think you all have copies of it. But what this really tries to show is how you enter the hotel and the main lobby area. And with this brand, it's going to be what we call an extended stay brand. So it has a kitchen, a small little kitchenette in each of the rooms. And what it offers is a continental free breakfast in the morning. And then there's a social hour in the evening that has like a buffet, a little dinner. And that happens all in this front area right in here. It'll have a generous meeting space for this type of hotel, as you can see. To orientate you, as Route 9 is up in here, so the meeting space is facing the north side, but it has this large terrace, if you can see that, on this side here to overlook the whole area, the whole valley area. And then on the south side, we have an indoor pool area that we're going to enclose and build, and a generous exercise area right here. So I think it'd be quite an amenity for the whole area from a guest perspective that can take advantage of everything this whole region has, and more of a long-term stay, a couple more, not just a one-night stay. Next slide. Again, this is some of the references that we're looking at, and you can see some of the work in here and the siding that we're trying to take some clues from as we go forward on this whole thing. And again, that's big mass areas and stuff, but you can just look at some of the detailing that's around in here and trying to pull that in a smaller way into the hotel. Next slide. Just kind of images like that we reference. And then, of course, the CIA from the south side in that whole area. So it's all for the design. So, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, not mine. With that, I'd like to introduce Larry Boudreau from Shays & Company.
I'm going to do it from down here. Can we shut this off?
No, you can just set it down on the table.
All right, well, thank you again. This is a very exciting evening for us. We've been, as you know, gosh, Tom brought me in on this thing 5 years ago. And I'm really excited to be here with you guys. To get to this point, you're seeing us for the first time, but it's been years, and then the last couple of months, very intense putting this submittal together. As you have in front of you, that was a big effort. The Chazen company is a full-service company. I had a team of 5 or 6 engineers helping me get this done. Chris is one of them with me tonight, and we're very happy to be here. The first slide is the 2007 concept plan approval, and what I wanted to show you is what part of that, what quadrant, what section of that approved concept plan that we're working on for this proposal. And all these documents that are on this PowerPoint came from submittals that you have. So any further up questions, you could reference them there.
I'm going to insert something really quickly here. I kept looking at this as though this was the approved concept plan, but it's not. This is the illustrative site plan. It's like a watercolor version. I have the original, I have the actual approved concept plan.
Okay.
It's far more detailed, just so you know. I'll be bringing this up later on, and it's easy. I don't think it's appropriate here, but on-street parking is required throughout this area. It's in 108-5.12. I'll give you the section later on. But you're not proposing that right now, and I don't think it to be appropriate in this area. But I'm putting this in the record now because the actual concept plan that's in this section does show sidewalks on both sides of the road, and it shows angle parking on both angle street parking. You don't need it. I don't know why it was there. You don't. The concept plan is a general broad plan.
Yep.
Through site plan process or final development, i.e. site plan process, we're supposed to narrow down. I just wanted to point out that when I kept looking at this thinking, this doesn't look right. And I finally realized this is in the addendums to the FEIS where this is pulled, but I have the actual real concept plan. It's a little more detailed than the pretty version of this. So anyway, just to go on, that's, like I said, I'll be talking about that later on. Thanks. Now that I blew your narrative, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I guess it got me because it's stamped approved.
Well, if you look also right down here, it says illustrative site plan.
Yes.
This is drawn actually from a whole section where there's good windows, bad windows, good dormers, bad dormers, good rakes, good cornices, bad rakes, bad cornices, signage bad, good signage. I went through the whole thing before here.
Yep.
It took me 2 weeks, but I went through all of it. So anyway.
All right, Chris, go to the next slide.
That was good, Larry. That was really good.
Well, I mean, this one shows we took the site plan and we superimposed it on it so you can see it's in that southwest quadrant of this plan. But if you go to the next one, you might see it. So here we're in zone 3, block G. Did I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can see it again there and how it fits in again, that southwest quadrant. Now, the area of the lot that we're defining, so if I can get this right, this guy right here, these lines come down to the right-of-way. That lot is 5.57 acres, taken out of the whole parcel because we're, of course, coming in for a subdivision too. So the larger parcel would be about 334 acres as lot 1, and then this one would be lot 2. As we go forward, every time we come in with another one, it'll be lot 3, lot 4, lot 5. But the project area is obviously bigger than the parcel for the hotel because we have infrastructure that we have to put in to support the hotel.
Access.
So when you add that access in, then it gets into, and the surrounding grades that we tie into it, it gets into 14.13 acres. All right, next one. So this is the site plan. Tell you what, Chris, go back one. Yeah. So on the site plan submittal, we have an access point here which lines up with the culinary across the street. It's a full access traffic signalized point. Then there's our north Route 9 access, which we also have on this submittal. In the future, this serves this area here, but also in the future, it will serve the wastewater treatment plant, which we're kind of indicating conceptually in an area there. The third access is off of West Dorsey, which is right here, and originally the layout aligned it coming down here and over. And one thing that this board has been very helpful to us is giving us some responses very early on, and that was one of them. Move that off of that knoll there where we had to take out a lot of rock, a lot of grading, and move it up here. So those are the three access points. And just before we go, all right, go ahead, go to the next one. This one here is a, the geometry is defined in the finding statements, and that's what this is. It defines very clearly the left-hand turn in. Of course, this right-hand turn in stays there. There's a, I'm sorry, left-hand turn into the CIA stays. We have to put it in a right-hand turn lane going in, 3 lanes out, and then we align this with the culinary across the street. Now, this whole geometry, this whole package has been sent to Lee Zimmer DOT last week, along with the updated traffic study. So as an update, they have it. We paid, Tom signed everything he needed to sign, wrote the check, and they're reviewing.
In addition, this is someone who was here when this was approved originally. This was actually somewhat, the design was specified by DOT at the time. Now, that noted, in that meeting that Pete and we all had, it's different people at DOT now, and they were saying, hey, consider it a tunnel, consider this, and I just about croaked, because wait, you should have said that a long time ago. So, but at any rate, this still adheres to everything that they had outlined before.
Right. But that's a good point, because they're different people, they still need to sign off on
Absolutely.
it. And so that's why once they give us the go-ahead, then we'll get into the detailed design of the access. What this also shows here, of course, is as this, we put a center island in here, landscaped island with dry stack stone walls on each side. Sidewalk is only on the north side that then would sweep down and then go across here. There's a signage that we've indicated here. All this is in that 150-foot setback. The 150-foot setback is probably, runs like right along here. A couple of other things to note, as this goes, this is a future drive going into the project. It's 30 feet wide here. This is 24 feet wide here. The sidewalk crosses here, runs along the east side of this drive, sweeps around, crosses, and then gets to the hotel, main entrance. Couple other things to note. This is the location for the packaged sewer treatment plant. Stormwater management is here and here. This is the bioretention area. This is the attenuation. The property line for Shaner is, or for the group, is right here. This is located within their property. They will own it, operate it. The leach field is down here. I mean, none of this would have worked if we didn't find good soil. So the soils map calls this, from what I remember, Knickerbocker, and it's good sandy soil, and it did perk for us. The drive going out to West Dorsey is here. I can't remember if Bill noted, but this is 133 rooms, 5 stories. And we have 134 parking spaces, all on the east side of the building. The other thing to note here is that this is the front of the hotel. The front of the hotel faces this way, and then all the room exposure is the back with the views. That's how it's set up. All right, go to the next one. This shows the landscape planting. Obviously, I can't get into the details here, but in communicating with Michael and his suggestions, and even the last round of comments, I'm noting that. We'll take care of that with the ash that you noted. We added more, and I understand about adding some more, so we'll look into that. What this tries to do is really kind of set the stage for driving in, having that planted island there, saving these trees to the right, and some to the left of the drive coming in. This is a wetland area here that we're encroaching, less than 1/10 of an acre
We should add it's an Army Corps wetland, and it's not a wetland, so to speak. That doesn't make much sense, but it's based on the hydrophytic vegetation that you
Right.
see there, et cetera. So it's an isolated, non-jurisdictional for DEC is what I'm trying to say.
Right, right, and it's less than a tenth of an acre, so it goes under nationwide permit. So that worked out good. We did introduce some planting into the buffer. We have, it's kind of hard to see, but what's nice is native grasses that we'll let go, you know, get up 2-3 feet high, wisp in the wind, but then there's going to be some maintained area as well, so it'll have that nice meadow type look to it. Here we're making an effort to screen the package treatment plant. This is fenced, the 6-foot high fence is around that. These things here, and this is for Pete. So,
Oh, goody.
yeah, here we go. And you know Pierre, right? Of course you know Pierre.
Pierre?
Pierre Brissett.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought you were going
Come
to
on.
the other.
Come on, Pierre.
Pierre.
Pierre Brissett. So this is a BioClear system. And, you know, the idea here is that it's all mostly underground. There's some parts of it that come up the ground, you know, a little bit. But the point here is this package treatment plant, subsurface discharge with the field over to the north side in the good soil. And the reason why we went with this approach, because it's scalable for the project. What we know is we have a hotel, and the demand is 22,500 gallons per day. Trying to tackle a wastewater treatment plant that's 10 times this size just wouldn't make sense. It pushed the project so far out. The Shaner Group would have a hard time financing it. This was the solution that we came up with. They like it because it's scalable to the project, and they can own it and maintain it.
So is this proposed to be permanent?
Yes.
Is what now?
So this wouldn't hook up to the future wastewater treatment plant?
No, it would not. It has its lifestyle would be, you know, 25 years, and that's how long these things are designed. Now, if anything went wrong, we're gonna plan to, in the event that that happens, to be able to get it over there. Okay, next. The lighting plan, I did want to bring this up. Couple reasons. One, these stats are, you know, really good. The average for the entire site, 0.5, maximum 4.4, minimum 0. So we're 0 down here. We're using full cutoff lights. The lights that come in along the drive have, let me just double check, I believe a light fixture height of 12 feet. Then when we get to the sides here, we go to 16 feet, and these 4 right here, which are double arms, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm showing them at 20. And if they weren't at 20, we'd have to put 2 more sets of lights in here. The idea is it's behind a 5-story building. Wouldn't see it, they would be below the building.
The height standard for lighting is a standard in 108-4, and those are mandatory standards, but they are also relaxable by the planning board if we find a reason to do so.
Okay.
And I think in the past, there is actually already precedent set by us that we would have less lights in the Hyde Park Mall technically, but everybody around here calls it Stop and Shop.
Right.
But we allowed higher lighting heights there so that we would have less lights.
Right. Right. Okay, good. All right, and the other thing I wanted to point out here is, you can't see it, but the light is on the warm side, you know, so the temperature range is 3,000 instead of 6 or 7 or 8, which is more of a brighter light. This is a warm, let me get the, oh, there it is. It's a warm white. I just want to make sure I got it right. Warm white.
That's the way I like my lights warm.
The other thing is the poles we're selecting are Salux. you know, so they're regional. And these are in the parking lot. Oh, they're all LEDs. And these are along the drive, so, you know, we need your opinion on them. And in your memo, you are correct. You are correct, because we're basically establishing this light fixture for the project.
Yeah, and you're referring to my memo. So just so anybody who's watching, I tried to give the applicants a little bit of a heads up based on some discussions with a few board members and just my own initial review. Because I did assume that whatever they put here will be, it's the template to follow throughout the rest of the site. So we have had a Hyde Park Lighting Committee, and they made 2 recommendations. This doesn't hit either one of them, but those were also, the recommendations at the time were primarily done for St. Andrews North until you get to Pine Woods, and then after you get from Pine Woods down this area north, they recommended a different, even more historic light fixture and style, one that is more Victorian, that would be closer to when this area was developed in the first place. The one that's in the St. Andrews to Pine Woods is, we call it the Shepherd's Crook. You can see it around town.
Yep.
It's, yeah. So it has a more slightly industrial look, but that was part of our comprehensive plan. Really requires the planning board to try to create a sense of place and to provide some unanimity and continuity, so people go, oh, I'm in Hyde Park, I can tell, whether that's because of the lighting or the use of certain fascia on buildings, whatever. That's what we're supposed to be aiming towards. So that's why I just gave you a heads up that the board should look at this and say, do we like it? Because we're going to see it all over that site. That's all.
Right. Okay, next one, Chris.
There is no next one.
Oh, no. All right, so just a couple more updates. We have been communicating with DEC, and I've been trying to get a meeting out of them, but they keep coming back saying, you're giving us everything we need. We don't need a meeting yet. So we've had that. The latest thing we did for them is an update on the Bellefield habitat assessment for the Blanding turtles. I believe that's in your package, and that found that there's no impact to them within the project area.
I believe it concluded is that there's unlikely habitat within this subphase 1A, because there has been a sighting, I believe, 0.8 of a mile somewhere around and through there.
Yep.
So in the initial review, it was accepted that there was likely habitat for plantings. If I'm recalling correctly, and I think I am, the habitat that was considered most suitable is back to the far rear,
Yes.
or the east and north side, I should say, where no development is planned. Initially, there was a golf course planned there, but that was dropped because of the presence of endangered, threatened, and rare species.
And DEC wetlands.
And, well, they're not DEC yet because they're not mapped.
Oh.
But it was accepted in the FEIS and the DEIS that they were likely under control of the DEC.
So 2 more quick things. The grading, which I'll run the final numbers for you, Pete, but when we were initially doing it, it's a balance, the job balances. And our intent going forward is to address any comments that we may receive from the board and submit by the end of this month, early next month, for the, I believe it's the August 16th planning board meeting. And with that, thank you very much for this opportunity to present. I'm going to turn this over to Tom and Mike and let them say a few words.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again. As we start this endeavor, after we just finished the last one, and Michael, you've been very involved with this from the beginning, and thank you especially, and everyone else's time, and also Larry and Jennifer and everyone else on the team, Joe in particular, for growing up here, and Mike lately. But again, thank you. I'm really excited about the project to get this finally going. I've been doing it for 5 years. Joe's been doing it for probably 10 years. So.
And us 12.
Yes.
Yes. Well, it's been a late night. I'll just say ditto on what Tom said, and I appreciate everybody's commitment to the project.
Thank you. Jennifer, any comments?
No comments. Thank
Okay,
you.
so the first thing is you don't need to be thanking us. These are our unpaid jobs because we're all volunteers up here. But we want to thank you for wanting to invest in the community and for working. I know how tirelessly, because I've had many offline meetings with you with different potential applicants, et cetera. And we're delighted the Shaner Group is the one that finally emerged to go forward. And I do mean that sincerely, that we're very appreciative, not just us, but I think the entire community. There are many ancillary benefits to having people stay here longer. There was an original multiplier for how long, if someone put their head down, how much more money they spent in Hyde Park. And 12 years ago, it was $147 a day extra. Whether that means going to buy Band-Aids, whatever, or dining out, whatever. I'm sure that's increased now. So this is a benefit to the town. It's also, this is envisioned to stay fully on the tax rolls. That's stated in the FEIS many times. So this will also be a boon to the school district and to our commercial tax base, the ratables for the town itself as a whole. And I think it's just a great project. That noted, before I go on to the consultants, I want to just bring up a few things from the memo because I want the board to make sure that we're all thinking about this. One, and I'm expecting some blowback from you, Ms. Van Tile, if you want to, but in 108-5.2 or 512B11B, no structures are allowed within the 150-foot buffer, and TAD considers underground fuel storage to be structures. In addition, fence is actually in the definition of the code as a structure, so is a sign. So as I pointed out in the memo, I think you'll need to get variances from the ZBA for where you want the sewage treatment plant to go. Also, I'm not going to pull it out here, but do you guys have copies of the FEIS, the full FEIS? So you'll see examples of fences, and stockade fences are not allowed, and according to what's in there conceptually. I don't think you're bound to this necessarily, because as I read through it, it said the overall project sponsor reserves the right to change some things, i.e. the hotel that was in the concept plan is stucco and very ornate with a red tile roof, etc. It didn't really fit the character of the neighborhood, but it was what Mr. Gagne, who was the project sponsor back then, really wanted, so everyone accepted it. But that's why I'm reminding the board is under site plan, we're supposed to make it more granular and detailed, and so that's, I think, our path forward through this. And again, you'll be hearing from the individual members shortly. I'm a little confused as about how much we're evaluating the second or the more permanent wastewater treatment plant. It's referred to several times that we're going to be evaluating it, but then there's not any details. The sheets are missing from the package that we were given. So we can discuss that later on, but that was a little confusing to me. Then I take it now that we're going to have this may connect in the future to the permanent or the larger wastewater treatment plant, but at least for the first 25 years it wouldn't unless there's system failure. So thank you for clarifying that. As I said, if you want me to show you in either the approved concept plan or in the blow-ups that are back in the back of the FEIS, there is on-street parking shown where you would now have it right along here. I think that's a terrible idea, but I do want to get into the record that as we go forward, we do need to think about on-street parking. The area that's shown here, as I said, it's angled on both sides, and there's a sidewalk outside and a sidewalk on the inside. The parking that, if this road extended up, this showed parallel parking. So again, that's actually a requirement in the code in 108-5.12. It requires that there be on-street parking to give it even more of a village feel and the pedestrian connectivity. So, I mean, if the rest of the board thinks we should have it here now, fine, but I don't think you want to see all cars parked willy-nilly along an entrance. I think we want to make that as attractive as we can so that people come up and say, hey, I want to stay in that hotel. I do want to bring up to the board that DOT really does encourage sidewalks on both sides of the road to minimize pedestrian crossings. So that if someone wanted to walk out, say here, and walk across this way to the CIA, assuming there's a ped phase on both on the signalized intersection, ultimately they could try either side. You don't really want to force everyone to be on one side because all pedestrian refuge is lost. The median here is gone now, so there's a left turn lane. DOT already evaluated that, and they apparently, back then, they thought it was fine. So, but I personally think it's a better idea to have sidewalks on both sides. We just got through this discussion, as you know, with the other proposal. Another item I pointed out was that the dry-laid stone wall that I hardly approve of, that's along the side of the sidewalk here, there's no grass strip between that roadway and that sidewalk. Usually you want 5 feet of green, then 5 feet of sidewalk. And if you did that, if there's a way to push this over that way, I don't know if it increases your amount of disturbance, Larry, into the wetland, but if you can increase it, then the pedestrians have a much safer way to walk because they've some distance between themselves and the car. Plus, you would then, when snowplow's happening, you're not going to have it. The stone walls, just go look at some of the examples around town. If they're too close to the road, the snow gets them and they become an unsightly mess. And I myself am unable these days at my age to keep on trying to repair private property stone walls, because I used to, through visual environment. Then the lighting, the photometric plan looks great. As I said, I just want to make sure that I think, Jim, if we've given you a path to request that the relaxation of that standard in certain areas for the lighting height, but the board will need to agree to it. As I pointed out, you were kind enough to take the mitigation list that I sent to you way back when and put it right in the maps so we could see what those were. And again, I think I put in there at the time when I wrote it up that it's by no means considered complete, because it was just me trying to go through a couple of days, but I haven't found anything else so far. But when we met with DOT, ultimately it's not on this plan, but there's a big improvements plan for St. Andrews and Route 9. And they told us at the time that we as a board will need, as lead agency, once we become lead agency, need to establish some sort of trigger for when those things happen. And I'd like to consult with DOT on those and maybe talk to the board about others. We don't need to decide everything now, but rather than having, because we're probably going to have small portions of this developed at a time and proposed, so we need to figure out once we get to what's the critical mass, where's the inflection point that says, okay, now you've got to do the improvements to the intersection. In addition, and this was not in my memo, it's when I went through and looked more carefully, or rather, I did point out that you state that construction will commence at 6 a.m. and end at 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. The mitigation that was accepted is it ends at 5 due to certain sensitive receptor points, and it's even less hours on Saturday and no construction on Sunday, so you'd need to revise that. There are supposed to be trail connections and bike routes proposed. You don't show them here, but I can show you in the blow-up, but in this section, there is what is called a rough walking trail that roughly goes here, that is designed somewhere around through here. In addition, the road that is not proposed yet right here was to be a central spine that would extend all the way north to St. Andrews, and there's supposed to be a bike route in through there. I'm only bringing these up because I don't know when the board would want to see, if the board wants to see a section of trail done now, or if we wait and say, hey, you've now done phase 1A, phase 1B, phase 1C, so let's put those things in. Again, it's kind of silly to think about putting in a bike route that would be 50 feet long. I'm aware of that. And if the trail doesn't connect anything, But like I said, my interest is putting this in the record now so that we start thinking about in the future where this goes, because it's probable that none of the planning board members here will be around as this project keeps going, and it may have successive owners. This could take 50 years.
Once the property lot changes ownership, it does become a little bit harder.
So to enforce, that's why I said, so we've got to figure out, and there maybe need to be agreements created now. That would be for you, Ms. Bental, and for Ms. Polidoro to figure out how we would go about doing that. Because the last thing we would want is to have a trail that starts here and up there, because the Shannon group has decided, no, we don't want people walking around. Like I said, that's all part of the approved concept plan. It's in my detail. It's also, if you go back in the back where you got your illustrative site plan, it's all shown in through there in different sections. So again, that's really it for me. I just wanted to bring that up for the board, so sorry.
That's all?
Well, I sent them everything else already. So, and again, Mr. Boudreau was kind enough to say, the other thing too to tell you is that I've seen the earlier iterations of the plans. I learned what a plunge pool is. It's not a small pool for persons. It's a stormwater management technique. Right. Dum-dum here didn't know that. But originally you proposed parking all the way in through here, and I said early on, there was no decisions made, but I didn't think that would fly with the planning board. It really didn't comport with the code. And man, next iteration, whoosh, gone. So that's what I like to do about front-loading this, so that it's easier when we see things that I think are acceptable to everybody. So that noted, Mr. Sotero, comments?
I'm not going to have too many at this point. We'll get into the details on the drainage and the water and the sewer, things that we're interested in. But I just want to make sure that you guys know that we're going to work really closely with you guys, because this is a really exciting project. It's good. It's good for the town. We have good things that are happening in the town. We just approved, the Mavis. There's going to be more things happening over there. So this is a really good thing for the town. So there'll only be a couple other folks from our office that'll be working on this with me, but I'll make sure that they understand that, you know, we have to dot the i's, cross the t's, but we want to work closely with you guys, and we always have. And that we're going to work closely with you guys to make sure that we get this, you know, done, and you guys can start like building this thing. So, I mean, we'll get into more details later, but two things. You know, I gave Michael the comment about the wastewater treatment plant. I'm not sure why we're considering it now in the secret process, but if we're really going to do it, I think we need a lot more like details on it, you know, like footprint size, visual impacts from like 9. I'm not sure why we just don't put it off until some other phase, but that's like your call, I guess. But if we're gonna go do it now, we do need some more, some level like of detail to just be able to say there's not going to be a seeker impact. So that's something you guys will have to like decide. The only other thing I'll bring up is, you know, the site was harvested. You know, there's still quite a few trees left. I don't know if they're great trees. I know there's, you know, some locusts in there. So, you know, I just don't know if the board is interested. Well, I'm sure they're interested in preserving, you know, like trees, but, you know, I know there hasn't been any trees located. So I guess that's something that we should talk about. Is there anything in this first phase of development area that's worth saving? And is there a possibility, you know, of saving it?
They're saving the trees that are located in through here, I believe Mr. Boudreau said.
Yes.
Yes. But this has been thinned extensively.
Yeah,
already.
no, it has been.
And most of the trees that are left are, there's a couple of maples. I mean, it's common trees for the most part, soft. That doesn't mean that I mean, I personally think the hotels can be framed more nicely if you have, instead of just planting all new landscape trees and waiting for them to grow up. If you can keep some, if you can preserve some trees in through, it's going to make it look as though it fits into the existing landscape better. And that's also called for throughout the code too, to try to preserve existing hedgerows, stone walls, and trees, you know, throughout.
Again, I just like bring that up as something, you know, to think about as, you know, we move ahead. So I think the first thing is just make sure we're going to have to, whatever comments that everybody has on the EAF, because that's the first part of the process, is to get, you know, the seeker process going. So we've got some things that, you know, we'll get to the applicant, and then if they can, you know, decide as what they want to do with, you know, the sewage plant, you know, the permanent one, and then, you know, we'll move ahead. But this is really cool. So
thank you for saying that, Pete, and that's why I brought up about the operation of hours. That was actually Ms. DiNapoli who found it in the EAF, and then I verified that in the mitigation.
Page 7 and page 8.
Yep, in the EAF, page 7 and 8. But I've gone through it myself, and I highlighted some areas, but I didn't see anything that, like I highlighted the 20-foot in height just to trigger that we'll need to relax the standard. There's one question that everybody always answers, that no one's ever going to use herbicides. Really? Really? You're never going to use herbicides? I don't think it rises to the level of a significant impact, but there's nobody who doesn't maintain, every landscaper around here is quick to use Roundup, trust me, or at least a broadleaf herbicide to try to get rid of plantains, et cetera. So, but at any rate, that's always check no.
We probably need to work on, you know, the visual section a little bit, because there is a statement there that says that that the hotel is not really going to be, is going to be minimally visible from Route 9 due to the existing vegetation, which I don't really think that that's true. I think it's going to be highly visible, but again, you know, whatever, you know, we'll get through it. We just want to make sure that the statements in the EAF are, you know,
and as I wrote, I think that we need to just sort of think about it as a board. I don't know that we need a balloon test or anything else. I hope not. But we need to think about the fact that this has, the 5-story building has been relocated closer to 9. There, it is higher up. It's lower than where it was proposed, but there were going to be a series of 2-story buildings before it, so you would have just seen sort of the top, and now you're just going to see this big building. That noted, they've given us a visual analysis of sorts in the back of the application that shows what would be visible likely from CIE campus, Roth Hall, as well as from the river, although the amount of river, whoever did that you showed, is like this much. If you're on the other side of the river, you're going to be seeing this hotel. You're not going to be seeing it if you're that close to the east bank of the river, I grant you, because you're not going to see anything but the CIA. Unless you're going to see a cliff. But you will, from across the river, see this. But I believe that can be amply mitigated by nice visuals, nice architecture.
Right.
That's my opinion. And earth tone, and suitable colors, and you've already achieved those anyway, in my opinion. We'll hear from the rest of the board. Anything else, Pete?
No.
Thanks for agreeing to prioritize this. That is something that I've instructed the consultants to do.
Actually, one more thing. If there's going to be any meetings with either the health department or the DEC, I think that we're more than willing, to come with you guys if we need to. Because as long as we can help you be an advocate, we're certainly more than happy to do that.
I've already volunteered
right,
for the DEC. I've already volunteered.
So,
I'm not sure what an advocate I can be with the Department of Health. You need Pete on that one, trust
well,
me.
but I mean, let's face it, some of these like agencies, the long time, more sensible folks are now like retired, and we have a new group of, of folks in there. Then sometimes the priority is not on this is a good economic project for the town. So I think there's got to be like a balance, and I really think it does help if there's the municipality who's there, weighing in on it, and not just the applicants just trying to get a project through. So
I concur.
So,
yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Polidoro, any comments?
Well, we're going to work through the technical comments in order to get the seeker process started. Just in line with the wastewater treatment plant was the third access point onto Route 9.
Mm-hmm.
It's unclear whether that is also part of this proposal or not.
The stated that it is.
Yeah, northern access is. The reason why is we're in front of DOT, one time.
Right.
We want to try to get done one time.
But you're not going to build it as part of this, or are you going to?
But I feel like once it's part of the phase,
yes.
then it has to get constructed.
Oh, because I thought you said in there that you weren't going to build it as part of this first phase.
Check. I mean, it's my intentions that we get it approved by DOT.
Well, you would get approved, right? Or whatever, we can.
Yeah.
So
we'll work through that.
Okay.
That's something we need to think about moving forward.
Yeah, because normally what's shown in a plan has to be constructed before you get your CO, and that's a stub of an entrance that would be constructed to.
Right, we're going to require bonding for it, and
We're trying to shave your costs, in case you can't tell.
All right.
But I understand too, you don't want to keep having to go back before DOT each time. Maybe
But
there's
like Pete said, we'll get the approval and just do so that makes sense.
We'll work through it.
Oh yeah, you can get a conceptual approval and then just take it off the plan so it doesn't affect what's built right now. I'm thinking about what Tad would want too.
I mean, we want to get it approved as part of the seeker process because, like Larry said, they only want to go once.
Of course.
And then it's just a matter of show it or not show it as part of this phase. Maybe show it on a later phase. We'll work through it.
Let me start to my left. Mr. Murphy, any comments? They can be broad ranging.
First of all, just thanks for investing in Hyde Park. The only note that I have is, Larry, what's the height of that little sewer plant that's going to be out front? You said it was going to have a 6-foot fence.
Yes.
What's the height of the part that's going to be above the ground?
So everything is above. There's several things that are above. One is the small generator, a couple feet, to take care of 2 or 3 horsepower pumps. Electrical panel has got to be above ground. And then I'm going to get this right, the BioClear tanks themselves, they're 14 feet high. They'll be in the ground 10 to 11 feet, so they'll be up above grade around 3 feet, those 2 tanks.
So they're going to be exposed to part of a building that's going to be 4 foot tall?
No, there's no building. They're just
okay, those tanks.
Yeah, they come up and they have a cover on them. The reason why they come up is for maintenance, so you can walk up next to it, pull the lid, and do the maintenance.
And so you don't feel like they're going to exceed 4 feet?
Oh no, they aren't.
4 feet would be if I'm driving, I'm not going to see it because of the fence. But if I'm staying at the hotel and spending a week there and spending a lot of money, I'm going to be looking down at a sewage treatment tank the whole time I'm there. Is there no way to disguise this for your guests?
Again, so I asked Pierre this afternoon. I said, can't we, slope the grade up to it and try to mitigate it a little bit? He said we could, so we'll look into it.
Yeah, I'd like to have that.
And I'm just thinking about, like I said, if I'm a guest on the 2nd or 3rd floor where I can't see over into the river, and I'd hate to look down at just tanks down there with the rest of the site's so pretty.
Well,
everything's in a box and can
again,
be
you're not
decorated.
looking at a tank. You're looking, you know,
We'll
it
take
does.
some visuals.
Thank you.
I think we need visuals to see.
I've seen
what's really
BioClear
gonna
tanks
look like.
before. It looks sort of like when I worked offshore, so thank you.
Yeah.
I can get you pictures of what it looks
Thanks.
like.
But again, thanks.
Yep.
Mr. Pickett?
Look forward to getting it going, do whatever you can to support. I had the opportunity when we received this to go through and take it through some friends and colleagues in town, neighbors, and I think part of the issue, I didn't get back exactly what I was looking for or hoping. The comments that came back were kind of looking like a college dorm, and it was awfully busy. I think part of the problem was the elevations that they have here aren't as big as this or bigger, so you can't get the 3D effect of how it's broken up, because this is very planar in the way that it looks. That was just an input. The college dorm thing came up several times. One of the inputs I did get from somebody was about the over the windows you have both arches.
Could you go back to slides so we could just, instead of, I see what he's looking at, but, and do you want to use mine?
Sure.
Thank you.
Generally, initially I'd like to stay at 10,000 feet on this one, but just as far as initial comments, and you said you're going to be redrafting and relooking at this again. And one of the comments was that, you know, you have like round arches here, you have square windows here, you have triangular here. What would it look like if it had more consistency of the type of windows top, you know, something like that. And then the other comment was the, again, I think part of the problem showing such a little picture is you're not getting a 3D, so you're not seeing everything as it comes through. You don't see the depth. And then the other comments were the that in the visuals from the street side, it looked okay. You know, that like there was something else.
Two sides,
needed.
north and south facing?
That we were just concentrating on this. I even had one person said this.
Do you mean, do you mean the Route 9 side?
Hospital, and I'm going, ooh, that's harsh. But again, as we get into more renderings and views of this thing, I think it'll be a lot easier to.
Mr. Hoyt, would these, is this changed from what we was first submitted, the side that faces Route 9? Sorry.
We've trained you well.
I believe this is the last, some of your comments that you did, we incorporated some of those. But going back to your comment, I think what you're seeing on this elevation versus that back elevation, some of the comments you're getting, I understand that. And so maybe there's an opportunity to add a little bit of balcony relief in there. And I think this elevation really shows a lot of depth because you have a lot of in and out, versus the Route 9 is more of a plain area.
Right.
And so there might be some opportunity where we got to look at trying to pull a couple rooms out and try to add some effect, like exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a great response. Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Piggott?
That'll do it.
Okay. Ms. Dexter?
I don't have time to speak. I'm writing. So this is really exciting, and having been on the original project and read all this stuff, I'm so happy that the work with the town board went well, because that was a huge accomplishment, and I'm just happy for everybody because it really looked like it works. It's working for everybody. I haven't had a real chance to look at these elevations, but having seen what you were looking at, the Mohonk Mountain House and the Red Lion Inn, and it's like, it does look like you pulled a little bit of everything, and I'm not sure if I like that or not. It seems like it's a little busy, a bunch of different things all going on. But one of the things I know about the Mohonk Mountain House is part of its charm is the fact that it's it's got a million different things going on.
That's kind of right there. I think that's a great shot.
Yep.
Which you
yep.
see what's happening there.
Yep. And as I look at this, I see these little, I don't know what to call them. They're little stone.
Cupolas? The cupola
On the floor, on the ground?
Yes.
And what, a stone?
The stone cupolas are...
He said cupolas.
Yeah.
How did he know that I like cupolas?
He could have watched YouTube.
No, this is true too. I really like that because that kind of picks up from that little, the wine or the water tower thing.
Right, exactly.
Which, by the way, as a child, I used to live right across the street from there, and when we looked in that, it had a lot of communication equipment, like old radio equipment. Like they had set up something, I don't know during what era, if it was like 50s or 60s, but in the 60s there was equipment in there.
From World War II?
I don't know. I don't know. But like old discarded ham radio stuff, it wasn't working, it didn't. So it was.
It's not there now.
No, it's long. It's all long gone.
So what you're saying in the front there, that all that stone looks very similar. That's where our IT room should go, right?
Exactly. But anyway, this is a really exciting thing, and we'll work through all the points. The lighting that you showed us, my concern, and I need to speak for the suites, is that light pollution. I'm very concerned about light pollution because this is a very green area. There is like none, there's minimal light pollution. So the one to the left, I know some of them look like it would be open and bright, but I know some of the modern design, it just looks that way and the light is actually downward and it doesn't spread up. So I'm very concerned about light pollution, so I need to see detail on this.
Okay. If you could have, I've seen this fixture before. I can't remember where, but if you could have a picture, there's got to be a picture of it, what it looks like on at some place. I think that would help.
Yeah, just the one that I was not happy with was at the entrance of the culinary across from West Dorsey. Those are not good. They just, if you're driving, they blind you. So I don't know who approved those.
Not us.
It wasn't us, I know. So look at that. I don't like that. And other than that, I'm fine, and I'm very excited.
Thank you, Mr. Oliver.
And I'm going to echo my colleagues with the excitement for this project, and thank you very much for bringing it to Hyde Park. I think it's going to be a great project for Hyde Park. And second comment is, now I'm assuming that on the west elevation, you're hoping that this entrance here will probably be used by a lot of the people going back and forth to culinary. Would that make sense? So an idea that I see here is trying to mirror your east elevation entrance on the west, because you're going to see that from Route 9, and you're going to see, you want to see like the grand entrance there, and it's actually going to function because of the guests you're going to have at the culinary. That's my early comment, and I haven't had a chance to really get into the details of things yet, but thank you.
Chris, do you mean to sort of take the sort of lodgy look here with the cupola and kind of marry that over on this side?
Yeah, and almost have like a kind of walk-through entrance and a
walk-through, yeah.
So what he's, yep, there it is. Essentially, with less depth, recreate something like this on the other side, on that side to make it more, so it doesn't seem like it's turning its back on the Route 9, I guess, to put it that way.
I think it's a great comment, and to that point, the picture on the right kind of reminds me of possibly something smaller in scale, so customers don't get confused that, hey, is that the entrance? Or is it? But something like that on a smaller scale, but yet bring that out. I'm not sure if we want to bring it across the road only because of the clearance issue and have to
I wouldn't.
But maybe almost like a porch type area that extends out.
To look inviting from the road.
Yeah,
and
so
with
that
this,
I think it would help.
people driving by are going to go,
Yeah.
okay, doesn't look like a college dorm.
And
Doesn't
in
look
this
like part of the
particular
CIA,
situation-
it's a hotel.
Correct. Yes.
You're going to have so much pedestrian activity from the culinary, and you're channeling everybody in that direction. just to have a greater entrance would seem to make more sense.
I think as a guest trying to get to across the street, I would hate to go around the front, around the backside.
Yeah.
So if we had something like this to come
Exactly.
in with a sidewalk going across that way, would make a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Ms. DiNapoli.
First off, I want to thank my colleagues for being so brief, because now this gives me lots of time for all of my questions.
Follow our lead.
Well,
I'm
well
sorry.
said.
When this project was first talked about, just as a side point, not that you all care, I had brown hair. And that is long since gone. My second question is, because I'm sure this is the elephant in the room, can someone explain about the red tractor and the cover on the red tractor?
I'll take responsibility for that.
Oh, I like it.
Well, I actually saw a tractor, drove by. It's a 1949 International McCormick.
It's cool.
Yeah, and we actually had a 1949 pickup truck to match it, and it sold about 10 minutes before we were able to buy it. That was going to go on the corner just to have it. The cover is really just to preserve it in the winter.
Right.
And we have a gentleman up here that works for us on the grounds that if there's a big rainstorm coming in, to cover it.
Covers it, yeah.
And he's not going to be able to do it perfectly, but at least he can cover it in big rainstorms. And in the winter, you know, if there's big snowstorms coming in,
And
just to try to preserve
And
it.
if you all take as good of care of the property and the development as you do with that, covering that tractor, we
By the way,
are
the
going to
cover
be
was-
in good shape.
The cover was almost as much as the tractor, believe. We had to get it custom made.
I'm going to be as quick as I can, but I just was very methodical going through the zoning, and some of these are questions and some of these are just comments. Under 108-5.12 for the Bellefield Plan Development, one of them is really a question probably for Mr. Dupree, where it states H. Serve the Mid-Hudson region beyond the boundaries of the town of Hyde Park. And I thought that was an interesting comment, but I had no idea what that meant.
It means that the uses that were going to be established within this area would not just have residents flocking to it. So if they propose, say, we want to put up a grocery store and that's it, that wouldn't fit because it's not necessarily going to be, it's a way to basically say we have a tourist district, we want more tourism coming in here. And I think a hotel fits that criteria. That's what we determined when we did the conceptual review.
I think Michael had already addressed some of the parking issues, and that it does state under number 5B, large expanses of pavement shall be avoided in favor of dispersed smaller areas separated by landscaping plazas and other uses. I don't know in this area how that can be accomplished versus just...
Yeah.
This is my own personal pet peeve about seeing big expanse parking lots. That being said, I don't know what movability you have.
Well, they have landscape, if I recall correctly, the landscaping plan, they've landscaped an area within it, but there is still, you know, part, you can see it in through here where the landscaping is in through here. But, and they've added sitting areas, what I will call plazas, on this side. That's where you see some of the turrety type tops or the cupola buildings. But within the confines of the space, they've roughly replicated the parking. When there used to be two L-shaped buildings here, the parking was internal, but there's not that many difference in spaces, as I recall, from what was there. And in addition, the applicants have stated that while there's a little bit more parking here than what's required, that it's envisioned that at some point when there's a building over here, that these are all shared. I mean, that's another thing for Victoria and Jennifer to think about, was how to make sure that all these access agreements are in existence, because it's to the, I suggest, it's to the hotel's best interest if someone parks here as a guest and then decides to walk instead of having to drive, because if they, you know, same really over here, but these would be shared use parking areas. So
how feasible is it to do underground parking? If not all of it, you're shaking your head, or a portion of it, just to make it a small amount?
Well,
looking at the faces, I gather.
I can answer that. It's multiple deck parking is envisioned as part of your concept plan,
Right.
and you are sticking with your concept plan. So the board does have the ability to say, no, you got to put it in there. But to answer your question, it's about $30,000 a stall when you have this
Okay,
much
so
rock
let me move
at
on.
cost. Just saying. It's
The
expensive.
screening around the septic system, I know we've been talking about wooden fences, stockade fences. Is there a reason why it cannot be made to look like a cabana? Something that looks interesting? Something with a top, that's something that's architecturally inviting? So as Michael pointed out, if you're on the third story looking down, you have something, even there, it could be a little cupola instead of a stockade fence. And hopefully that's not in the $30,000 range. Architectural features. This is very critical in the sense that if we don't get this right, nothing else matters. This is, when I first came here, Noreen Riley was the president of the Chamber of Commerce, bless her soul. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but she was the one that first said to me when I came to this town, always remember, Hyde Park is the gateway to Northern Dutchess. It is the first thing people see. As a former innkeeper myself, true, it's a small business I had, but I was in the lodging industry for over 16 years and still am on the peripheral of the thing. I know how important the aesthetics are to an astoundingly successful business. As people enter this town, they have to be wowed by it. They have to say, oh my God, I can't believe we got a room here tonight. And we're going to stay how many nights? 4 nights? 5 nights? That is what you want. Because if they want that, you make money. The town makes money, the businesses make money, and the developers make money. But if it's an ordinary looking building, or if it's a confusing looking building, I am concerned about the way this looks. I think how I first saw it, and maybe as we go along it will evolve to something different, but it looks like you took several ideas, and that's very appreciative, and you put a little this and a little that and a little that. And you have to kind of figure out what it is that you want. In our code, it does state that we must maintain the estate-like setting along US Route 9, complementing the FDR home and the Valkill National Historic Site. Hyde Park is known for its Roosevelt fieldstone. I am not suggesting you do a whole building of fieldstone, but if you did maybe 2 stories of something like that, it's a lighter color stone. It is softer on the eyes as you are approaching. If you then above that did shakes or some type of fiberglass cement siding, if the roof lines were stronger, I mean, there are a lot of different renditions that can be done. There needs to be, I think, more porches, more patios, circular driveway, gardens that maybe I just did not see as I read through this. One of the things I always loved about the Red Lion Inn is their front porch and their rocking chairs. You know, in the middle of February, you're going to see people sitting out there all bundled up on those rocking chairs. It is very warm and inviting. You want people to not come just for a day or two to go to the culinary. You want them to experience Hyde Park and all that Hyde Park has to offer. The culinary is critical. You're right across the street. And obviously you're very wise, that's where you're gonna get a draw from. But in between them eating, they have to do something. I mean, they could go to sleep because they've eaten too much, but they want to see the other sites, and there are numerous of them in this area. The millennials are big on outdoor activities. The baby boomers, who were all getting older, need to do more of these outdoor activities. They're going to stay longer than just a day or two. You need to be thinking of them and how this all fits into that. This should be like the gold star. This should be the highest level for energy efficiency, greens. I don't know if you are planning it to be a green property, and the different levels of the green property. I mean, this is the future. As they come into Hyde Park, there's a clear distinction between what they have just passed by and all of the hotels in Southern Dutchess that look cookie cutter. And you have that little break, and then you're gonna come down the bend and you're gonna see this huge hotel. And it's gonna be huge because it's the largest building around, 5 stories. The psychiatric center is going to be building a hotel. You know, we need to raise the bar, and I'm not saying you aren't, but you're here first. If you set the bar at this level, they're gonna come in, they go, oh, they're here, we're going to have to do more. If you're here, they don't have to do much more to get the traffic, and that's not good. You know, the lodging industry, as you well know, has changed a lot, is still evolving. It is greatly affecting the Northern Dutchess area. A hotel is vital to this area. It is really very important. I think I have waited the whole 20-some odd years I've been here for a hotel, so thank you for finally coming, even though I've gone gray. I have some pictures, and please do not take offense. I do not mean this to say this is what these buildings should look like. I mean this solely as samples of where you can pull something out of. The top one. The top one is a Marriott hotel in Moscow, Russia. It looks like New York City's Plaza Hotel. What was interesting about that, don't expect marble, I'm not talking that. I'm talking about how they were able to use the roof line. Think of that roof line with this roof line here, the turrets, how you could make that top level suites. You have that fabulous view from that drone that we saw. Oh my God, imagine spending time up there. That would be cool. How you had the build out really architecturally interesting. On the other page is the Red Lion Inn. I mean, right across the front on the lower level is their front porch. It's a simple building. You know, for some people they go, that's great, others not. The other one is just a Queen Anne style. And again, it's simple, but the architectural detail, it's sort of like they made a decision which detail they wanted, and they went across with that. I think what you have done so far is amazing. I am really so excited. We are finally here. And I think all good things can come from this. I have probably a lot more to say, but considering the hour and my colleagues are going to like disown me, I am going to keep quiet now, but to be continued.
I think, well, I'm not going to yammer on too much either. A couple of questions. What is this is wood, I take it?
It's a wood type product, probably be like a hardy plank, so long lasting.
And this is actual red brick that looks
Yes.
like the CIA red brick? And then
brick.
I know that because these are computer generated, is the stone here synthetic or is it actual field stone? And then is it the shape of, in the Dutch colonial revival look, because that's, I just found what Diane was talking about, using stone in the manner characteristic of the major buildings of the town shall be preferred. So what they're talking about is not stacked, like you would do a wall, but lay it flat. That's what I think they're talking about. Is this something similar that you're using here, or?
I think right now it's conceptual, but listening to some of the comments, I think what we need to do is to add more of a tripartite look. Then I think it'll bring some of the scale down versus that dormitory look. And based on what I'm hearing, maybe we do 2 stories here, 1 story down in here, maybe look at like what we're doing kind of in here a little bit, but then use more of that stone and then turn the stone around this corner here. So at the intersection,
You have
this intersection, right? That's the look you're going to see from the corner intersection where the light is right now. And maybe, to your point, bring some of that stone down through here so it turns that corner of the 2-story and it kind of anchors the building so you don't get that big facade look from what you're talking about. I think those are great comments. I agree.
I think part of what is guiding, or I'm not going to insert this into Diane, but you look like you've taken more of the design inspiration from Mohawk Mountain House rather than a more traditional looking style, say, such as the Queen Anne or the stick-built Red Lion, et cetera. And I think that's not a bad, starting point, or rather a bad inspiration at all. That's the reason why there's no dormers shown up here, because they don't really have those. And the turrets, I call them turrets, but they're not extending high. Instead, it's, they're down on the ground level, in other words, rather than extending up high.
We also have them on the front side right in here.
Yep.
I think it'll help when you see a different rendering, too, the next time. We can make some of these comments and bring some of the rendering. See it 3D a little bit might help out a lot.
I agree. And again, I don't know if, I'm going to say this is not meant to be insulting either. In your, back in the back here, in the conceptual plan, the illustrative conceptual plan, it actually refers to these windows as trendy and not allowed. Just so you know. Trendy and not allowed.
Oh,
that's, again, I don't think we have to be bound by this. I just thought it was funny when I was reading through there that the original concept is everything is super traditional, no Palladian style windows, nothing like that. But I myself would just like to see the side that faces Route 9 a little better articulated when you use the term adding up more bump outs. And also, I think, and I'm not an architect, but when Chris talked about creating more of something that makes more sense of that little entrance that would face Route 9. I think that's a good idea.
These are great comments. I agree with that.
And then further, from me, I'd like to see some way to make sure that the pedestrian circulation is safer. Right now, going along that entrance and having no grass esplanade between you and just a curb and a car, that doesn't seem like it's encouraging safe pedestrian movement. And I think we should try to get sidewalks on both sides now, because we're not going to get them later on once this is subdivided off. I'd like for you to consider what you want to do about the trail system and the bike route. Again, that's all buried within, or kind of based on what the concept plan was that this was almost going to be its own village, truthfully.
Right.
It's going to be its own little village where it could be not quite self-contained, because you want to have people coming in and out. But as you move forward, you want to make sure that there's a way for people who are in it to move without having to drive constantly, because that's part of what this was predicated on, was to be able to come in and just stay and spend the whole day and shop. Maybe see, at one point there was it got dropped because of their economic impact or their economic study, but they were going to have their own movie theater. They were going to do like an upstate film, like have an art film, just like two, and through there, but things so that this would be kind of a different lifestyle, as I called it earlier, to go through. but I think we've made great progress from the very beginning. Obviously, we're not really detailed yet in our comments, but I got as detailed as I could based on what I saw. There'll be more technical details, as we know, coming from Morse Associates. I mentioned point 3 in my memo is signage. Jennifer, it specifically states in the section that the signage is guided by Article 24. This is for you too, Victoria. But Article 24 regulates size of letters. It regulates the number of signs you're allowed in locations. And if this sticks to Article 24, you're going to be going for a lot of variances, I'm thinking, because the mass of these buildings is not going to be that you can only put in a 10-inch letter. So I'd like to give consideration as to, that's what I put in there, was that there are some addendums that establish some basic bulk regulations, but I think maybe we should kind of have its own signage for this section. I don't so much you have to go to a variance every time. I mean, it makes more money for the town, but it adds an awful lot of delay in the future, and I'd like to figure out some way around that as we go forward. Other than that, as long as you're accepting that you'd have to get a variance for I like the dry laid stone walls. That's very important to tie yourselves into the character of our community. Really, truly it is. But they're structures the way our code defines them, so you could just get variances all at one time for everything. And I do think, again, I want to see this hotel succeed. I'd like to make that sewage treatment plant, just the BioClear tanks, as attractive as possible. I don't know how to do that. I'm not an architect.
Well, why don't we meet on it when we have our next meeting, like our technical meeting? Maybe there's a way to, shift it a little bit, or like elongate it, maybe. I don't know. Maybe instead of.
You're pretty limited in through that area. I'm aware because of the drainage swale, et cetera. So when Diane said a cabana, I thought, instead of a stockade fence, make that, because unless you're going to do evergreens, which ultimately lose their lower limbs, you're still going to see a stockade fence. Make the fence something that fits better in style with this. There's got to be a way to do that as well.
Maybe they could put it in a stone cupola.
Yes, but otherwise, thank you guys for staying so late. I apologize that we had 2 public hearings where they went on a little longer than what I anticipated, but that's what you do. So we'd like to set our next workshop for August 16th, I'm assuming, so we have a time for technical detail, and then I think I'd like to consider trying to circulate for lead agency as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that we want to get out a memo like early next week as far as just comments on the EAF. So I'll talk to Liz, tomorrow, but we should get whatever comments you have. Anyone else on the board?
I sent my longer version to Liz today.
Oh, that was all on? Okay.
Yep, everything else I
Because I think we want to get that out so that we can, as you say, we could get the process going.
Yeah,
and we'll get with Tad and see if she has anything.
I don't want to slow anything down by bringing up the trails and all that, but I do want us to think about it and maybe have a path forward. Because, of course, given the generous contribution that you're making toward a future sewer district in the middle of this town, it behooves us to get through this. So, a signed site plan for you. In addition, I know from working with Tom for 5 years now that he's been wanting to get a shovel in the ground for a long time. And we finally are making the first step toward that shovel in the ground. So, and Diane correctly said that there may be a hotel at the psychiatric center. There's no rush on that. I know, because they're still doing mitigation of all the asbestos, and it's a long way away. And even then in their plan it says there may be a hotel. Their first interest is doing the big box stores at the front to replicate the plaza just to the south of it. So at any rate, so we'll put you on the agenda for the 16th. We'll set up a technical meeting. In the meantime, thank you all. Safe drive home. And I do have to say, since your partner in the firm, Mr. Alexander, also wants to get some priority, poor Victoria will be living and breathing 2 projects for a while. this one and the Enclave. So at any rate, thanks again, and we'll see you in a month. Okay?
Thank you very much.
If there's anything I can do personally to help, let me know. As we go through.
Thank you.
And I have to thank everyone in the audience for staying so late to the last portion of our agenda. Let me see if I can find it again now. Yep. Okay. The next item on the agenda is a site plan waiver request for an accessory structure at 7 Maple Lane. Ms. Hin Schaefer, we know from signage comments over the years, at least over my 12 years, and she did receive a CBA waiver for its location. It's an attractive-looking building, and I believe you satisfied the neighbors because they were up in arms at first about the size and location, et cetera. So
yeah, it was kind of close to their property.
I'll point out that no one came tonight, so I take it that everything worked out okay. That's what Chairman Bickford told me. We do have the recommendation from our zoning administrator, and to remind everyone that the reason why this area is subject to site plan approval is because we're supposed to evaluate carefully if it's visible from the river, the Vanderbilt Estate, or the Roosevelt Estate. It's not visible from any, and actually from the river, you have a ridge line. Good night, guys. Thank you.
Isn't it also in the historic district?
No, this is just in the SAS.
Oh, okay.
So, any comments from the board?
No, I'm excited to see it. Those elevations are very cute.
Plus, I put some window boxes on it, and you know, what I would like to do is figure out some sort of stone treatment along the bottom.
You know we like stone.
Yeah, and my house has brick on it.
It
a little
does.
bit of tan brick with the redwood. So I don't know if I want to tie that in, but we also have a lot of stonework and stone walls that I'm going to rebuild. So I gotta just decide
Nice, Kate.
which way to go.
Nice.
You know, and that doesn't have to be done right away.
If it's a site plan waiver, we don't have to do it.
Okay.
We don't see it.
Okay.
We've
I was
waived.
thinking a big neon sign on top river.
How about a cupola?
You know, I looked into that. I did look into that because I really like them too. But
Good night.
yeah, it wasn't necessary. So,
So, who has this file?
That would be me.
Thank you, Jan.
Resolution number 2017-20, whereas an application requesting a waiver of site plan has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by Kathleen Hines Schaefer on May the 5th, 2017 for property located at 7 Maple Lane, Hyde Park, New York, whereas, now therefore be resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for file entitled Hines Schaefer regarding the specific request is received May 5th, 2017 as amended by the Zoning Board of Appeals on July 12th, 2017 and in the building permit application file for this project.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed watching tonight, seeing what the projects are.
well,
I know
it
you
was good,
stayed for a
and,
long time.
You know, it's nice to see what's going on. I have not been here for quite some time, so hopefully I can get back in the loop with things. So thank you very much.
Great, good to see you.
Kate.
The next application is for Craig Thomas Orkin. There's a change to the sign. Mr. Herzing is here. We have the recommendation for the sign permit. It looks nice. Thanks for staying all this time. I hope you had edification. Any questions, Jeff, from the board?
No, but this would be another sign coming into compliance, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
So
It's a
that's-
compliant sign, 100%.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it looks really nice.
Well, there's one similar down the road where the storage
Yep.
facility is.
Yep.
And actually, the guy who built that one's building this one.
Ah,
Nice.
that's why. Okay.
But
So,
the plant that helps, though.
absolutely. That's
We're keeping the plant.
yes.
Good.
Right.
So who has this file?
I do. Resolution recommendation for issuance of sign permit pursuant to Town Code Section 108-24.3A4D. Resolution 2017-30. Whereas, be it resolved, the board hereby recommends the zoning administrator issue the sign permit for Greg Thomas Pest Controls /Orkin based on the drawing by Visual Concepts Incorporated as submitted by the application form.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Jeff. It's good to see you as always. And our really patient gentleman, you must be Rodwald Consolini.
Rodwald. James Rodwald. He's the applicant. And
See, we've been trained.
James Rodwald is the owner and the applicant. I'm Frank Mazzarella, an architect for the project.
And do you have a famous relative in Rhinebeck?
I have a lot of them, yes.
I know your mom quite well, and I believe your house you purchased from Nick Inyafo. Am I right?
From the
No.
bank. From a bank. It was in foreclosure.
Oh, it was foreclosed on. Okay, the former owners of the Inyafos. They now live in Rhinebeck. So, nice quiet area over there for you.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Really quiet.
Very nice.
So, is there anything you want to add for us? Since you have a TV viewing audience, maybe by this point, I think they're all asleep.
Well, we're applying for a waiver, as you know. So they're actually setbacks. They're actually in the neighborhood district, but also in the historic overlay because of the property contiguous is the was one part at one time part of the Vanderbilt estate.
It was built for their needs.
Yes, and
it can be in white design.
So we comply with the 100-foot setback. It's actually 140 to the property line. Basically, there's an entry which is in disrepair. It's kind of an ugly box structure. We'd like to bring it a little up to date. We're trying to respect the footprint almost exactly.
You are.
Yeah, and use the actual structure to support so we don't have to build a new foundation, do some other things to bring it, you know, up to date, and then do some nice exposed wood and repaint the facade and so we think it's going to be improvement both to the neighborhood, the streetscape, and I think the area, it is very nice back there. The fact that they're on the creek and the way those properties face, total, you know, game changer for those properties.
It's also a game changer that when I moved here, that the stone bridge, the gates, was falling apart and in disrepair. And when Mr. Hilliker and Ms. Liu purchased the property, I think they call it the Howard property. It's owned by several different people since then. But when it was built, he actually purchased the 250 acres and then had that rebuilt to historic specifications. He's kind of a fanatic, Mr. Hilliker. I was at the similar property. It's a twin of the property over here that locals call the Hearst House, I think,
Yes.
Dr. Hearst. We were there at Valerie and Lyle's for a party, and they opened up the door, and he goes, "Oh my God, you got the original hinges." He ran home, got encaustic, put it up there, and then had them replicated for his house because they'd already gotten rid of those. So he's done a fantastic job. I'll also add that your house isn't actually visible from his; it's just from the entrance. It happens just to be adjacent on the parcel. So anyway, we have a recommendation from the zoning administrator. Who has this one?
I do.
Thank you, Chris.
Site plan waiver, Town Code Section 108-9.4C2, resolution number 2017-31, whereas an application requesting a waiver of site plan has been made to the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board by James Rodwald and Morella Consolini on July 10, 2017 for a property located at 29 Howard Boulevard, Hyde Park, New York. Whereas, now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Hyde Park Planning Board hereby waives site plan requirements for the file entitled Rodwald Consolini regarding the specific request as received July 10, 2017 in the building permit application file for this project.
Second.
Ooh, a tie. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Are you going to live here?
Yeah.
Welcome to Hyde Park.
Thank you.
You may have already been living here, but welcome to that part of Hyde Park, if that's the case.
And I really like the way you designed that. It was a very, very cool.
Well, we think it's an interesting building. Once you get inside, it does have some surprising, interesting mid-century detail, and that's what we're trying to emphasize a little.
You've emphasized the mid-century modern look.
Yes,
Although I keep saying mid-century modern, we're in a different century than that first term came out. So
It's a little bit overused, that term, but yes.
yeah, well, it's made for embracing too. So, but I like the fact that you've added wood through there, and I know the other property owners will be very happy to see the improvements made now.
Yeah.
So good luck. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I hope that you learned something about your new community here tonight.
I've learned a lot, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. The only items left on the agenda are first, need a motion to, has everyone had a chance to read the minutes of June 7th?
Yeah.
Can I get a motion to approve?
So
Yes.
moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And has everyone had a chance to read the minutes of June 21st?
Yes.
The motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Video Ventures. Thank you, everyone. This is the longest meeting we've had. It's 5 of 11. So it's been a while since we've had these. But thanks, everybody.
Wow.
Good night.
Good night.
The bars will be closed.
Is this yours? This is yours, right?
When Ann and I first joined, Chan can tell you. Do you remember our meetings used to go?